Chapter 381. The Black Dragon was slaughtered. The vampires were annihilated. The only survivor of the Dark City was the devil warrior, Adolf. The Black Dragon was dead. His clansmen did not manage to rescue the vampires. They fled in all directions. But killing a dragon was not William's goal. He wanted to form a dragon's blood legion. He needed at least 2 or 3 great dragons. Hence, in the days that followed, the dragon-slaying squads of the City of Dawn went on a killing spree in the Nightmare Forest. Regardless of whether they were great dragons with clansmen or solitary great dragons, as long as they were in the Nightmare Forest and had a clear criminal history, they would not be able to escape from William's clutches. Until now, there were only 7 days left before the 10 years of blood war. As luck would have it, William had managed to gather the 5-colored Dragonblood Legion. This was a legion with over 3,500 people. But at the same time, William, who was strolling around the City of Dawn, suddenly passed by someone. He turned to look at the middle-aged man, who seemed to be a foreigner. He was dressed in a long golden noble robe. There was no servant behind him, but he had a dignified aura that made people not dare to approach him. The middle-aged man did not turn back. He picked up a piece of ice cake made by an ice mage and curiously tasted it. Then, the middle-aged man was astonished. It was delicious. He looked at William and asked softly, "Have you killed enough?" William narrowed his eyes and slowly said, "It's not a question of whether it's enough. It depends on the situation." "Oh, do you mean to continue?" William shook his head sadly. He said in a declarative tone, "Dragons are not more noble than humans, and humans are not inferior to dragons. Everything in the world, every race, every living being was born from this land and this world. Their lives should be free and equal. On the day that they were created, they were not equal. The dragons were powerful, the elves had long lives, the Seraphkin could fly freely in the sky, the humans were more intelligent, and the dwarfs had more dexterous hands. These things seem to be equal, and they all have unique abilities. But between humans and races, before they reach the extreme, they're filled with class differences and inequality. The City of Dawn represents justice, so I have to do things that are just. If I give up on justice because of a great golden dragon's warning, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Just like how I would never compromise in the face of the dark invasion. Just like when I face the son of darkness, I will never retreat. My heart is towards light. My heart is towards justice." Hearing these words, or in other words, after hearing the words "great golden dragon," the middle-aged man couldn't help but smile. He had a better impression of William. Immediately after, his expression immediately changed. He was here to look for trouble. There was no reason for this little brat to have a good impression of him, just because he saw through his identity and praised him for his greatness and gave him a good speech. As such, his expression immediately became serious as he said, "They have made mistakes, and you have indeed acted for the sake of the race's justice. But do you dare to deny that it wasn't for the dragon blood and dragon crystal?" William didn't shake his head. He only continued to say, "I won't think too much. I'll just go with the flow. Just like how dragons wouldn't eat humans just because they begged for mercy. Humans wouldn't not step on an ant just because it was right under their noses. There was no fairness in this world, but justice existed in the hearts of men. I'm the kind of person who can't bear to see weak creatures being bullied. When I have the ability to act righteously, I'll do it, no matter who the enemy is or how powerful the enemy is. Lord Golden Dragon, you can think of me as a domineering lord who loves his people. Therefore, I won't allow any evil dragons, cruel magical beasts, or bloodthirsty orcs to appear in my territory." Immediately after, William continued to say, "The great golden dragon has come to the City of Dawn. I don't know if you want to kill me or what, but I believe that Lord Golden Dragon is on the side of justice. I also believe that the great golden dragon won't do anything wrong. Therefore, I'm willing to accept whatever punishment you want me to receive. As long as you don't hurt my people, don't hurt my subordinates. Come on. I'm willing to pay any price for the justice in my heart." William slowly closed his eyes. With a face full of glory, he accepted the punishment and even death. But the middle-aged man was dumbfounded by William's verbal attacks. Justice, light, kindness. One after another, he was accused of crimes. This was indeed a headache. There were some legendary great dragons in the southern region, but there were even fewer golden dragons. But the golden dragons liked to meddle in other people's business. They were also diplomats who mediated the conflicts between the dragons and the humans. They liked to transform into humans and live in the human cities. They liked to participate in the affairs of the humans. They could even see the golden dragons stopping the humans from starting a civil war on the battlefield. But it had to be said, William's eloquence had convinced him. The main reason was that William was handsome. The legendary golden dragon couldn't resist this godly talent that didn't discriminate between races or factions, but only between light and darkness. It could not be helped. The same verbal attack would have different effects in different people's mouths. What was this? If one was handsome, one could travel the world. If one was not handsome, one would not be able to do anything. Moreover, William had killed elemental dragons. The golden dragon looked deeply at the Lord of the City of Dawn. Then he thought about his mother, who was at the same level as him. The corners of his mouth twitched. He patted William's shoulder and said, "You're right. I hate all unjust and criminal acts. I'm also a messenger of justice and a pioneer of light. But even if these elemental dragons commit crimes and eat humans..." The golden dragon clenched his fists tightly. To a highly intelligent creature like him, it was extremely disgusting for a dragon to eat humans. It was as disgusting as eating their own kind. Then he continued, "But I have to say something that's difficult. This is about the races. There are not many dragons. Don't attack the dragons anymore. Even if the dragons have committed many evil deeds, they are still underage in the eyes of some people. If not, I won't be the one to look for you next time. Take care." After saying that, the golden dragon looked around and was about to leave. But William was moved to tears. He grabbed the golden dragon's hand and said with a choked voice, "Great golden dragon, I've finally met a like-minded person after meeting you. Lord Golden Dragon, please don't leave in a hurry." The City of Dawn was huge. It was also very small. This is a city where all the good races live together. I like peace. I hate wars, especially wars between the races. Therefore, I've always wished for the City of Dawn to become a city where all the good races live together. Lord Golden Dragon, as a messenger of justice, why don't you stay in the City of Dawn for a few more days and see if there are any policies that need to be changed? After all, I'm only a 21-year-old half-elf. I'm still very young to be a lord. I really hope that Lord Golden Dragon can teach me how to deal with racial peace." The golden dragon scanned the bustling streets. There were elves, humans, Serafkin, and dwarves. This small city was comparable to the capital of a human empire. There were too many races and humans from too many countries. But the City of Dawn in front of him had an inexplicable sense of harmony. This made him very curious. The golden dragon wanted to tell William, "It's good enough for a lord like you. Why would I teach you? At least, other than those annoying chosen ones, I've never seen such a harmonious city. But you want me to teach you?" The middle-aged man had a reluctant look on his face. William continued to plead. The middle-aged man coughed a few times. His Royal Highness almost bowed. The middle-aged man proudly helped the prince up and said in a deep voice, "That's right. You're still very young. There might be some unfair policies in the city. I'll stay here for a period of time and teach you how to be a righteous and kind lord." "Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I didn't expect to be taught by the great golden dragon." The prince relied on his relationship with the golden dragon to curry favor with the golden dragon. The golden dragon, who had wanted to warn him, had unexpectedly stayed in the City of Dawn. William did not know how long it had been, but he did not need a lot of reasons to curry favor with a legendary golden dragon. If there was a chance, he would definitely not let it go. And the reason why the golden dragon wanted to stay. What was the reason? Of course. But there was another important point. The legendary great dragons of the dragon race had a mission to protect the weak dragon race. but it was only limited to the strong great dragons protecting the weak great dragons. But the relationship between the elemental dragons and the metal dragons was not very good. If this was still the first era, if this was not the gods' continent ruled by the humans, if there were enough dragons, the internal strife between the dragons would last for countless years. In the first era, the main force of the internal strife was the war between the elemental dragons and the metal dragons. Except for a few rare dragons, the bad relationship between the metal dragons and the elemental dragons had been going on since the mythological era. If the two dragons of the same level encountered each other, there would definitely be a fight. The golden dragon seemed to have come to warn William, but he was doing it for the sake of the dragon race. He wanted to see the bigger picture. But if the elemental dragon was killed, the golden dragon might be secretly happy. A legendary gold dragon stayed in the City of Dawn to guide William as the Lord of Dawn. In fact, the golden dragon wanted to understand why there was no chaos in the City of Dawn when there were so many races living in it. The prince would not tell him that it was because of his endowment. He wanted to tell him, when all his citizens had a good impression of him of more than 500 points, they would not easily fight for him. He could tell him, if the golden dragon did not stay here for 8 to 10 years, he would not understand. But if he stayed here for 8 to 10 years, he might even forget whether he was a member of the dragon clan or not. When William returned to the city lord's palace, he stroked his chin and licked his lips. I want to ask if anyone wants to sneak attack my City of Dawn. Sure, I'll leave with my army tomorrow. I'll tell the golden dragon that I'm going to lead my army to fight the orcs. I don't believe that he won't help me look after the city. Come and steal. There's a legendary great dragon here. Come and steal. Whether it's the City of Greenlight, the East Sea Metropolis, or the City of Dawn, you can steal. This proud, righteous, kind, and meddlesome legendary dragon will turn all of you into ashes. Chapter 382. The legendary gold dragon, Kalinski. Kalinski was very sad. He wanted to give William some suggestions to improve the City of Dawn's policies. He wanted to show off his knowledge and wisdom. But after he stayed in the City of Dawn for a few days, he discovered a problem. Some policies were suitable in other cities, but they were useless in the City of Dawn. Some of the City of Dawn's policies were outdated in his eyes, but they were perfectly implemented. So, he stayed for 3 days. He found a loophole in the policies. The citizens of various races lived in the City of Dawn, and they enjoyed unimaginable happiness. Kalinski could clearly feel the joy of his family. There were no conflicts between the adults, and the children of various races could play together, go to school, go on adventures, work, and join the army. The elves would not despise the half-elf bloodline, and the humans would not despise the dwarf for being short. In the City of Dawn, Kalinski saw a lot of truth, kindness, and beauty. It was difficult to discover the scheming of the human kingdoms and empires in the City of Dawn. It had to be said, this strange situation terrified Kalinski. What exactly is the reason why the races living here can live in complete harmony, to the point where there are no conflicts between their own races? Kalinski was a gold dragon. He had lived for thousands of years. Even though he had not experienced the second era, he was born in the early stages of the third era. Over the past thousands of years, ever since he had the ability to transform, he had often lived in the human society. He had experienced many things. He was a knowledgeable dragon. He had been a teacher for the children in the Red Fire Kingdom. He had also been a bard in the Sunset Empire. He had also been a librarian in the library of the Frost Empire. The books he had read were piled up like a mountain. The things he knew were unbelievable. In any case, he believed that he had great wisdom and knew a lot of knowledge. But because he understood and knew more, he could not imagine how powerful the insignificant lord of the City of Dawn was. How could he allow so many races to live together? Is it because of his charisma? No, I have to ask. The legendary gold dragon Kalinski took a deep breath. He looked at the deserted streets and shook his head in bewilderment. He walked to the city lord's palace. He glanced at the 2 elven guards at the door. Did they change players? Where's the lord of the City of Dawn? I'm Kalinski. The 2 elven guards looked at each other and said in a deep voice, His lordship left long ago. This is a letter he asked me to deliver to you. Ah, left? Kerensky was confused. When did that happen? Subsequently, his face twitched, and he immediately knew what was going on. He understood his own affairs. Every time he fell into a state of incomprehension, he would lose sight of everything else in front of him, as long as no one heard him or sensed danger. Then, he would meditate in his own world, constantly thinking about the course of events and the results. Often, he would be immersed in this for days, months, or even years. Perhaps the Lord of the City of Dawn had greeted him, but he did not hear him. Kerensky picked up the letter that William had written to him in Draconic, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Her handwriting was not very good, and it was a little small, but this little half-elf was still very thoughtful. This was because this letter was written in the Golden Dragon clan's language. Therefore, Kerensky casually asked, "Does your lord like the Dragon clan's language?" Yes, his lordship loves the Dragon clan's language, especially the Golden Dragon clan's language. He said that the Golden Dragon clan's language has a wild and unrestrained beauty. The Elven Guard immediately replied. He did not know how many times he had repeated this sentence in his heart. Oh, I see. The arrogant Kerensky nodded expressionlessly. He could not help but smile arrogantly in his heart. He turned his head and stuffed the letter into his space ring. He read the contents of a letter. The righteous Lord of the City of Dawn will lead a 100,000-strong army to conquer the evil Orc Empire in the far north. He hoped that this kind and righteous messenger would help guard this beautiful City of Dawn. Is this considered helping? This is what I should do. As long as I am a righteous creature, I should protect this beauty. Kerensky surveyed the magnificent City of Dawn. He would help look after the city first. Although there were some epic professions in the city, but they were too weak. They were silly and would not meddle in other people's business. When it came to righteousness, Kerensky had to do it. Sigh, I forgot to ask when the Lord of the City of Dawn will return. Kerensky slapped his head. He would think about this when the time came. He wanted to see if he could figure out the problems of the City of Dawn. If he could not figure out the crux of the matter, he would ask the Lord of the City of Dawn how the City of Dawn was so peaceful, stable, and free of conflict. At this moment, Prince William, who had been on the road for 3 days, had led a 100,000-strong army, and more than 8 million players to the far north. In this world of ice and snow, the temperature was negative 40 degrees Celsius. Millions of players had arrived, and they were extremely excited. Everywhere, the players were shooting snowballs, building snowmen, and skating. After all, the players had lived in the southeastern region for a long time in the wind and rain. They had enough of the monotonous lifestyle. Except for those who could not leave the sea, most of the players were extremely happy when they arrived at the far north. However, many of the players changed from shooting snowballs to shooting violent ice balls. The snowmen piled up, and it might be a player hiding in them. This led many young snow elves to go astray. But apart from these harmless things, the players were still very excited. Since the day they received the SSS-level mission, many of the players had not recovered from the shock. They received a mission that could be described as a forced buying and selling mission. They had to buy winter coats in the far north. Initially, the players refused to do so. But Prince William said that he was afraid that they would freeze to death. If they did not buy the coats in the City of Dawn, they would not be allowed to participate in the mission. The players were dumbfounded. They could only pinch their noses and spend some money to participate in this damned activity. Other things aside, it was an SSS-level mission. It was the only mission in the God's world and all the continents. The players were envious of it, using gold coins to buy a leather coat from a florist. What kind of leather was this? It was a little pungent. Why was there no explanation? Even insight was not useful. In any case, after the players scolded the developers of the gods on the forum, they obediently bought 2 sets of thick leather coats. But ever since they arrived at the far north, many of the players who took off their coats discovered a problem. If they did not activate their battle energy shields, their health points would drop rapidly. The weather was so cold that they could freeze to death. When they saw the price of the coats in the Frost Kingdom, they were even more dumbfounded. It was extremely expensive. Other than the rich bosses, no one could afford it. It was not only a warm coat, but it was also a very beautiful fashion. It was made of magical bee skin with winter protection and even attributes. TSK. When the NPC shops started to sell attribute clothing, the game was not far from closing. Many players continuously scolded on the forum. But this game did not have a game designer. The game officials only looked at the forum expressionlessly. They thought to themselves that the NPCs were the ones who brought them there. It had nothing to do with them. But time gradually passed, and it was now 3 days later. Even though the mission had not officially begun, when they saw batches of elven legions walking out of the teleportation hall in neat steps and wearing high-quality furry armor, the players' blood was boiling. Because of the sense of honor of participating in the super mainline mission, they couldn't stop their excitement. At this moment, the forum was full of discussions about the super main storyline mission of the 10 Years of Blood War. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. Did you see that? The Blackleaf Elves, Moonlight Elves, and Snow Elves. The three major elven races of the legendary continent are fighting against the Orc Empire. There are so many armies. If there are no accidents, the number of NPCs participating in this war will reach tens of millions, or even more. The female player, Little Monster, said, I can't take it anymore. The Blackleaf Elves are so handsome. Their little faces are red from the cold. It's so interesting. The Snow Elves' hair is so white and beautiful. The Moonlight Elves are not bad either. Did you see Princess Annie? She's like a little penguin. She's so cute, super cute. I'm a fan. Speaking of which, did you notice something? Even among these elves, His Royal Highness is still the prettiest. His bald head is indeed very beautiful. Ahem, don't change the topic. You've all received the mission. Did you see the exchange list for this super main storyline mission? Battle Achievement List. You can use Battle Achievement to exchange for equipment, secret manuals, skills, tools, positions, NPC guards, and even wives from the Dawn mercenary team. Ahem, don't talk about wives. There are many core players in the mercenary team. The wives that have been assigned to them are all good women who came from the city of Dawn's brothels. His Royal Highness is obviously treating us as honest people. D*MN. I can't take it anymore. Yes. I've already reported this reward function to the officials. It's simply too frustrating. How is this finding a wife? It's obviously finding countless NPCs to cuckold. I've already given up on the option to reward the core members with wives. Everyone, just ignore it. Ahem, as an outstanding core member, I really want to say that my wife has a lot of unlockable positions. Boss, I'll do it. All right, meanwhile, a group of professional players gathered in a large ice house. They warmed themselves by the stove and sat on a hot brick bed, discussing the benefits of the upcoming war. Chu Yochio put his hands in his sleeves and looked like a hard-working old man. Exhaling white smoke, he said, "The most important option on the contribution chart is that if you obtain 10,000 points, you'll get an NPC personal guard. It's possible for humans, half-elves, elves, and dwarves. The bloodline level is uncertain, but it's marked as the same level. The officials are really generous this time. They actually intend to reward our NPC guards. Isn't this equivalent to a follower?" Changli Jioga could not help but laugh. Xiaoyan shook her head. Of course not. Pets are not absolutely loyal. They will run away if they are abused. Not to mention the personal guards that have been exchanged. They were once intelligent NPCs with lives and families. If you don't have enough affinity with these guards, they might leave on their own. This is the nature of the world of gods. However, the strength of NPCs is obvious to all. Whoever obtains a boss-type personal guard and boosts its favorability to the max would basically be the symbol of invincibility in group battles. It's just that the game officials didn't give any introduction to personal guards. Just as the players were discussing how to get rid of William's subordinates who were not very loyal, and whose bloodlines were only at the middle level, the players were discussing how to get rid of them. Prince William was participating in a meeting. It was a meeting regarding the Vanguard army. The three major elven clans did not want to send their legions to their deaths. Hence, Prince William glanced at the mission rewards and thought about how he should take a cut from them. He waved his hand. The mission of the Vanguard Army. He accepted it. This was a Vanguard Army that was formed by 8 million middle-level players. That's right. This was not considered a Vanguard Army. According to the number of people, it was considered a large-scale attack. Chapter 383. For the sake of benefits and long-term development, William chose to accept this difficult challenge. They were the vanguard of the Empire War. However, if the army of 8 million players really charged forward, there was no doubt that there would be orc powerhouses who would interfere and secretly launch a powerful move. Various domains and forbidden spells would be released continuously. When the players saw that the situation was not good, the possibility of them escaping was very high. If they were defeated, the loss was a small matter. The City of Dawn would be humiliated. When there were too many players, even if the enemy experts attacked, William would not be able to stop them. Let's put it this way. There was an unwritten rule in the God's continent. The battlefields were divided into low-level, middle-level, and high-level. The low-level battlefields were for beginner and middle-level professionals. The middle-level battlefields were for advanced and grandmaster professionals. The high-level battlefields were for epic and legendary professionals. Experts would not lower their status to participate in wars that did not belong to them. But the unwritten rule was an unwritten rule. When there were too many players and they could revive, one should not think that any of the forces would abide by the rules. So William wanted to use this group of players as the vanguard. He could not make it seem like there were too many players, and they could not join forces to attack the same place. Hence, William quickly divided the players into 18 legions of 100,000 people. They were named the 1st Death Legion and the 18th Death Legion. The mission of the players was to attack the 18 iron fortresses occupied by the Frost Orc Empire. The Orc Empire was located in the northernmost part of the land. The Grand Duchy of the North and the Snow Elves were on the left and right sides of the Orc Empire. At the border of these three forces, the Orc Empire had built 18 large iron fortresses. The Frost Empire and the Snow Elves had also built 8 iron fortresses at the border to resist the invasion of the Orc Empire. In short, the three forces were surrounding each other's iron fortresses. They constantly launched invasions and wars, or fought each other for resources. This situation had been going on for thousands of years. It did not matter whether the iron fortresses could be conquered or not. They were the vanguards. The key was to fight with fire, to fight with courage, and to fight with fearlessness in the first battle. That was enough. Just as William was about to spend some money and offer some rewards to deceive the players. It was the second last night before the war. The Snow Elf capital city welcomed an envoy from the Frost Empire. After knowing the purpose of this Grand Magister's visit, the higher-ups of the 3 elven clans had no choice but to hold meeting. Snow Elf King, Bernice Frost. The 3rd Elder of the Moonlight Elves, Bloody Moonlight. The 2nd Elder of the Blackleaf Elves, Anderson Blackleaf. Ever since Kronos had led the Dark Army on Moonlight Island, the Moonlight Elves who had retreated from Moonlight Island had yet to elect an Elf King. Great Elder Camelot was the only remaining saint of the Moonlight Elves. He had replaced the Elf King and was in charge of all the affairs of the Moonlight Elves. The Blackleaf Elf King did not come. However, the 2nd Elder of the Blackleaf Elves, Anderson Blackleaf, was his younger brother. He was also a legendary-level powerhouse. He would represent the Blackleaf Elf King to handle all military missions in this war. Actually, there was no other way. Since the 3 elven tribes were waging war against the Orc Empire, they needed a commander-in-chief. The Blackleaf Elven King and the Great Elder of the Moonlight Elves didn't want to come over because they didn't want to argue here. And the most important thing was that this was the Frost Forest, and the enemy they were facing was the Orc Empire that also lived in the extreme north. In this extreme north, if they wanted to attack the fortress, they wanted to climb the snowy mountains with only a few trees to destroy the Orc Empire. The Snow Elves were far more experienced than them and knew how to fight this war. In particular, the Snow Elf King, Frost King, and Ice Queen was not just a woman. She was a saint. TSK. A female saint? She was one of the few existences in the God's continent. She was comparable to a god on the verge of extinction. Bernice Frost just stood there. She was full of reasons, excuses, and power. Just one sentence. Don't argue with a woman, and don't argue with a female saint and reason with her. Hence, as a legendary-level warrior, the Blackleaf Elf King knew that he was no match for her in a verbal battle. He was also no match for her in a physical fight. He might even be beaten up by the couple. Hence, of course, he was not interested in coming over to be bullied. As for the great elder of the Moonlight Elves, Camelot, who was known as the strongest saint among the 3 tribes, was too lazy to fight with a female elf king for control. As long as the 3 tribes sent out their troops reasonably and did not send one of them to die, the 2 of them did not intend to be bullied until the final battle. In the conference hall, many legendary and epic professionals from the 3 tribes were gathered. There were also some elven princes and princesses from the 3 tribes. William was not considered to have the lowest realm, but he was considered to be one of the weaker ones. However, the City of Dawn had not only brought 100,000 regular soldiers, but also won 8 million intermediate players. It was a great honor for him. He sat in the front row, at the table in the center of the 3 tribes. How should he put it? He now represented a faction in the City of Dawn. No one would treat him like a child at this time. However, at the southernmost end of the table was the envoy of the Frost Empire. He was the Time Grand Enchanter Kieran Time. He was dressed in a snow-white magic robe and had an old face. He had a long white beard and looked like an ordinary old man. He did not have the aura of a grand enchanter. At this moment, he stood up and looked around. Greetings to the Elven Queen, 2nd Elder Blackleaf, 3rd Elder Moonlight, and all my friends. Bernice Frost nodded slightly. Blackleaf and Moonlight returned the greeting. Everyone stood up and bowed to the Time Grand Enchanter as a sign of respect. In the next moment, Kieran Time looked at William and smiled warmly. Of course, I have to thank the Lord of the City of Dawn. Without Prince William's help, the Grand Duchy of the North would have become a wasteland. My king has asked me to bring a gift of gratitude. I hope that you will not reject it. William stood up and smiled. You're too kind, great enchanter Kieran. The humans and elves have been allies for many eras. This is what I should do. Kieran smiled at William and looked at Bernice Frost. He went straight to the point. My king has no objections to the 3 major elven tribes waging war against the Orc Empire. The humans have no objections either. But what? Does he want to object? Let him come over and talk. I'll wait here. I also want to know if the Arctic belongs to him or me. And what humans? Can the Frost Empire represent the humans of the legendary continent? Or does he represent the human race of the 9 continents? Bernice Frost sneered, interrupting Kieran's words. The corners of Kieran's mouth twitched. He knew that this was not an easy task, but he was willing to do it himself. The Empire Conference was held. He was immersed in time. When he regained his senses, everyone was looking at him and the imperial edict in his hand. Mother ***, I'm really unlucky to have to reason with a female saint. However, Kieran wasn't too weak. He was the official chief enchanter of the Frost Empire, the honorary director of the Royal Magic Academy, and the chief minister of the cabinet. He was not as powerful as the Elven Queen, but he had the support of the entire Frost Empire. He could not lie, and he was not allowed to lie. So, Kieran just chuckled and explained, Your Majesty, you misunderstood. The Empire has no intention of stopping the elves from going to war. We just want to participate in this war. We want to participate. We don't want to participate. I hope that Your Majesty understands what I mean. As soon as he said that, the elves in the room did not look too good. Since the 3 races dared to start this war, they must have enough confidence to win. Although there would be losses, this price had been calculated by the elves, and it was also within the range of the 3 races' leaders. The most important one was, there seemed to be very few resources in the Arctic. But the Arctic supported the snow elves, behemoths, frost giants, frost dragons, and an orc empire with tens of millions of people. That meant that there were definitely a lot of resources here, or even a lot. The main purpose of the Frost Empire's participation in the war was not to share the resources. The prince sighed. This little butterfly, still changed the direction of the plot. The Grand Duchy of the Northern Region had a space fold and completely became a mortal enemy. The Frost Empire had secretly lost a lot, and the border with the Orc Empire was completely isolated. This was the key reason why the Frost Empire did not join the 10-year Bloody War plot. But now that the three elves were fighting, the Frost Empire still wanted to take the opportunity to get a piece of the pie. Not to mention anything else. The Orc Empire was very strong, but they could survive from the Second Era until now because no one intended to touch them. The Frost Empire had always intended to use it as a training ground, but everything had its pros and cons. If the Frost Empire participated in this war, it could also reduce a lot of the three elves' losses. At least, it would not be like the previous life. After the 10-year Bloody War, the population of the three elves plummeted. Although the quality of the army returned to the peak of the Second Era, the losses were still too great, so there was no chance for them to rise again. In the Frost Empire's participation, it seemed that the three elves would get less resources, but the problem of reducing the population would not be as serious as in his previous life. Bernice was expressionless. No one knew what she was thinking. She suddenly said, "How do we participate? Everything will be led by the Queen, and the Grand Duchy of the Northern Region will be supporting," Kieran Time said softly. Bernice narrowed her eyes. "Well, the Vanguard Army the day after tomorrow, the Grand Duchy of the Northern Region will be responsible for 8 military fortresses. You know what to do." 8? Kieran could not help but be a little confused. "You have a problem with that? Didn't you say you wanted to participate?" Bernice sneered. Kieran Time's mouth twitched. "You said the elves would be the main force, and we would be the support. There are a total of 18 fortresses, and you want us to fight 8? That's King main force, right? And then again, what's there to fight for? Everyone is here for resources, for the mineral veins and materials behind the fortress. Damn, no wonder the Queen was so domineering. She was waiting for him here. He could not refuse." Kieran Time sighed. He pondered for a while and said in a low voice, "Okay, everything will be led by the Queen. Good. You will stay here in the future as the liaison between the two military alliances. Ahem, there's a specialist for this. I don't have to know. The three elves have many time element professionals. Please guide me, great enchanter Kieran." Kieran could not help but pucker his lips when he heard such a direct reply. He was so angry. He might even have to stay here until the end of the war. But William's eyes suddenly lit up. It had to be said. Kieran Time, in the later stages of the game, he was the only time element sage in the legendary continent. Bernice had good foresight. It was a good idea to kidnap him and make him teach the time element professionals. Not only could Old Leather find a teacher, he suddenly thought of a good thing. William narrowed his eyes and looked deeply at old Kieran Time. "Brother, I'm definitely going to have a relationship with you." Kieran Time glanced at William. He realized that William was the most pleasing to the eye in the entire conference hall. He silently added 180 affinity points to him. In between, their gazes collided. Instantly, sparks flew. Chapter 384. This meeting would not end in a short time. They also discussed the military movements of both sides, the number of legions to be sent, when to fight, when to retreat, the exchange of resources and information. In short, they wanted to completely destroy the Orc Empire. This was not something that could be done in a few days. It was a war that would last for many years. Until now, the Orc Empire had sensed the large-scale movements of the Elven Legion. As for their 18 fortresses, they had also been increasing their troops over the past few days. There were at least 80,000 beastmen stationed in each fortress. Besides most of the middle-level orcs, there were also many advanced and grandmaster orcs, trolls, magical beasts, and even some frost giants and behemoths that were controlled by magic existed. In other words, the vanguard of the Dawn mercenary team was only the flag bearer. No one expected William to take down any of the military fortresses. He just wanted the invincible vanguard to consume the military resources of the Orc Empire. It was a snowy night in the north of the Orc Empire. It was an endless stretch of snow-capped mountains that stretched as far as the eye could see. On top of the snowy mountain, there were many dark and sturdy orc cities. At this moment, The cities were all billowing black smoke. From time to time, there would even be flames soaring into the sky. This was because these orc cities were also huge logistics bases. Now, this huge machine of the Orc Empire was operating at full speed. In front of these cities, besides the 18 military fortresses, there was also a great ice wall built against the mountains. The wall was 50 meters high and 1,800 kilometers long. It surrounded the snowy mountain behind it. This Great Wall, it was called the Black Great Wall, because this was the Great Wall built by the Devils during the Darkness Invasion of the Second Era. When the Devils launched the first Darkness Invasion, they first came to this land in the extreme north. They built many steel cities in this place that no one wanted to live. Even the Black Great Wall, which was used to defend against attacks, had been used by the orcs until now. But it was also here. The Devils raised the flag of war against the masters of the gods' continent. So, the three elven tribes planned to destroy the current orc empire. They wanted revenge. Because as early as countless years ago, the Darkness Invasion did not bring any danger to the elves. After all, the elves were too powerful at that time. They lived in the center of the gods' continent, in the boundless green sea, under the protection of the World Tree. No one would come to such a damned place like the northernmost land, nor would they care about this place. Therefore, the problem that the Darkness Invasion posed was more of a threat to the humans and the winged race. As the master of the Second Era, although the Elf clan was unwilling to pay attention to the Demon clan, they also understood that this was an era of changing the master of the continent. However, the Elves still did not attack the Devils. They only wanted to preserve their strength and let the winged race and the humans deplete the Darkness Invasion army. Unfortunately, the humans and the Harpies had nothing to fear. Wherever the demons attacked, they retreated. Weren't they just homes, territories, mineral veins, and resources? I don't want anything else. Everything was given to the demons. But in this way, the elves were in a bit of a dilemma. This allowed the Nephilim army to fight all the way to the center of the gods' continent, near the edge of the forest where the elves resided. But at that time, it was already too late. The elves had allowed the Darkness Invasion to continue to expand. Demonic dens had sprung up everywhere, and there were more and more dark creatures. The situation had reached a point where it was difficult for them to stop it. Hence, under the blessings of the World Tree and the decree of the Lord of the Elves, the elven army walked out of the forest. They took the initiative to attack the Demon clan. However, there were too many dark creatures. There were too many demons. The war situation was far more complicated and intense than the elves had imagined. They suffered greater losses. The Darkness Invasion was not something that the elves could face alone. It was a war that all the intelligent races should join forces to fight. It was a pity it was too late. It was too late. At that time, the elven army was fighting everywhere. The epic, legendary, and saints were fighting against the devils and their underlings, the low-end intelligent creatures in the gods' continent, the orcs. However, no one had expected that there were 10 saints from the Demon clan who went deep into the forest alone. They committed suicide by blowing up their bodies and the sacred weapons of the Demon clan to completely destroy the World Tree. Hence, the greatest support of the elves was blown into pieces. The home of the elves and their sacred land were destroyed. They took drastic measures. Ever since then, although the elves were powerful, they were already in an era of decline. When the winged race, the humans and the dwarves, saw that the situation was not good, they chose to join forces to face the Darkness Invasion. That was when 12 powerful saints gradually appeared in the human race and led the humans to become the masters of the Third Era. Hence now, if the humans and the elves wanted to destroy the Orc Empire, apart from removing the 18 spikes in the ice and snow, the most important thing was the Black Great Wall. In a word, as long as they could destroy the Great Wall, they would be able to attack the snowy mountains and destroy the steel cities. They would also be able to occupy the countless resources behind the snowy mountains. However, if the Black Great Wall that was built in the Second Era could be destroyed so easily, it would be very simple. under the unspoken rule that saints and legends were not allowed to massacre the enemy soldiers. This black great wall had been strengthened by countless spells. The sorcerer's forbidden spell could only leave some marks on it. The magic cannon could only create a hole on it. Therefore, this black great wall was also known as the most difficult obstacle to overcome in the legendary continent. Now, on this great wall, there was a person every 10 steps, an arrow tower every 30 steps, and a magic cannon every 100 steps. There was no end to it. There was no end to it. At the same time, an orc wearing iron armor and covered in snow was looking at the 18 fortresses in the distance with his brownish-yellow eyes. Beside him, there was a bare-armed demon with strange patterns all over his body. The devil's body was taller and stronger. Whether in terms of physical fitness or other aspects, they were more powerful than the orcs. This was because the devil's race was the same as the elves and the devils. They were the best humanoid intelligent races in the two worlds. They belonged to a race with almost no weaknesses. However, the invasion of the darkness in the Second Era ended in the defeat of the devil's race. They suffered countless casualties, and almost none of them returned to the dark world. Now, they could only struggle at death's door in the remote areas of the 9 continents. They even had to submit to their former servants. These orcs belonged to the lowly creatures of the gods' continent. But it had to be said, this legendary devil professional was full of respect for the orc in front of him. This was because the icebound sword sage was an absolute powerhouse. He did not have the blood of the pale orcs. He did not have the strong body of some orcs. He was short and had very little black hair on his chest. The hair on the top of his head was sparse and almost hairless. It even made people feel a little funny when they looked at it. But he had the heart of a powerhouse. He had the strength of a true powerhouse. That was him. He entered the Saint State at the end of the Second Era. With the help of the Black Great Wall, he protected the defeated orcs and devils. He settled down in the far north and protected them until now. The Icebound Sword Sage. He was the only saint in the legendary continent that belonged to the Dark Camp. Gertie Icebound, the king of the Orc Empire, the seemingly funny guy, suddenly turned around and asked in a cold tone, "Ogre, how long do you think the elves will take to conquer the 18 fortresses outside?" The legendary devil thought for a while and said, "If they want to conquer all of them regardless of the cost, they won't need half a year or even 3 months. But if they want to conquer the Great Wall, I don't know how long it will take. At least, they will have countless casualties." Gertie chuckled. "I think so too, but I know that the Ice Frost Empire has also joined a war." Well, Ogre clenched his fists and narrowed his eyes. If someone hadn't discovered the problem of space folding, the Ice Frost Empire's army in the northern region would have been killed. They wouldn't have had the chance to join the war. Gertie shook off the snow on his body and sneered. "It's rumored that the Elven Prince did this. Things are indeed a little troublesome." Ogre sighed. In the face of the elves' attack, some people in the Dark World had already predicted it. They had acted in advance and caused the problem of space folding in the Grand Duchy of the northern region. They wanted the Orc Empire to further deplete the strength of the elves. Unfortunately, this kind of natural wonder space problem could only be activated but not accelerated. In fact, even if there was no space saint to accelerate, the space folding would still happen. After it was activated, the speed would still be fast and would not attract too much attention. But coincidentally, there was a small accident in this matter that was personally controlled and calculated by the King of Darkness. Gertie did not want to think about the little elven prince. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "This war will start, whether the humans of the Ice Frost Empire join the war or not. The Orc Empire under my feet, and everyone in the territory will do their best to cause damage to the elves and the humans. But I hope, don't forget your promise." This sentence, it was not meant for Ogre. But the next moment, a legendary devil lord suddenly appeared. He looked at the orc saint with a smile. His eyes were filled with respect, but he was cursing the ugly guy in his heart. He said with a smile, "Your Majesty is right. The darkness invasion is just the beginning. We demons will replace this group of trash and continue to join forces with the orcs. When the darkness invasion officially begins, the gods' continent will be engulfed by the darkness sooner or later. At that time, the orcs will become the true masters of this continent. After all, we dark creatures do not like to live under the sun, the gods' continent. In the end, we still have to rely on you orcs. Gertie Eye nodded expressionlessly. He suddenly asked, "Am I handsome?" The Devil Lord was stunned, but he quickly recovered and immediately boasted, "According to the eyes of the race, your majesty is the most handsome orc I have ever seen." Bang! A punch. The legendary Devil Lord's head was gone. As for the headless corpse, it was quickly sealed in ice. Gertie Eye's punching speed and valiant strength made the legendary Devil Lord unable to resist or react at all. Subsequently, he gently pushed the frozen corpse down. Crack, the ice shattered. The corpse turned into countless crystal-clear snowflakes and drifted away with the wind. Gertie Eye raised his eyebrows. "Hypocrite, get the dark world to change an emissary. I want one that lies less." "Yes, the most handsome, and most valiant His Majesty in the God's continent." Ogre lowered his head and said in a deep voice. The corners of Gertie Eye's mouth curled up slightly. "That's right. As the most handsome man in the God's continent, how can I be the most handsome orc?" Chapter 385. The prince did not know that an ugly person was competing with him for the position of God of Handsome. Of course, even if William knew, he was not afraid. In terms of appearance, he did not admit that he was the second best in the God's continent. Just this bit of confidence was enough for him to have. After all, the gift of being handsome was unheard of, not to mention seeing it. At this moment, he was enjoying the snow and drinking with Kieran time in the house. They looked at each other with a flirtatious look in their eyes. When he saw the ring that Kieran handed over, he didn't feel good at all, because the gifts from the Frost Empire were too generous. It was inhumanly generous. Other than the 200 times 200 M space ring, 10 million gold coins, 300,000 magical stones, 30,000 magical crystals, and 10,000 kilograms of mithril, orichalcum, adamantine, purple gold, and other rare metals. The value alone was enough for the City of Dawn to arm 30,000 soldiers to the teeth. All of them were equipped with dark gold equipment. What was even more impressive was that the Frost Empire also gave him a blueprint. Airship, MMP. When William saw the construction requirements of the airship, he cursed in his heart. The Frost Empire had given him a lot of gifts, especially the blueprint of the airship. It was something that many kingdoms dreamed of. But the cost of building this thing was enough to destroy the current City of Dawn. The Frost Empire seemed to be doing this for the City of Dawn, but in fact, they wanted to make William spend a lot of effort to build the airship. This would slow down the development of the City of Dawn. In short, they had given him all the good stuff. Don't blame the Frost Empire for not being generous. As for whether William could afford to build it, it was up to him, but William knew what he was doing. He kept thanking Kieran on the surface, but he secretly hid the blueprint of the airship in the deepest part of the space ring. This was to prevent himself from being tempted to build this huge thing. Let's put it this way. If the City of Dawn did not have 1 billion gold coins worth of assets or enough magical stones, it would not even be able to touch the airship. This super strategic weapon that could fly extremely fast and had a super defense shield. It could also shoot magic cannons in all directions. It was a complete mess. But there was one thing. If William wanted to use this thing, he would need many supporting magical airships and strong professionals to prevent enemies from rushing over. Otherwise, even if this thing could really be built, it would just be a moving target in front of legendary and epic powerhouses. It's getting late. Rest early, Your Highness. I'll head back first. After chatting with William for a while, Kieran Shirwong felt that the more he talked to William, the more he liked him. This made him feel a little strange. So, Kieran decided to slip away first to prevent himself from losing his reputation. However, William grabbed his arm and said with a smile, "Don't. Let me introduce you to a disciple." Kieran looked into William's eyes. He had thought that this old man was going to experience some kind of stimulation beyond the imagination of ordinary people. However, the latter half of William's words made him heave a sigh of relief. Subsequently, Old Leather pushed the door open and entered. When he saw Kieran, he quickly walked up to him and knelt on the ground. He hugged Kieran's leg and cried, "Teacher, are you the teacher I've never met? Thank you for your introduction, Your Highness. Thank you for your recognition, teacher. From today onwards, I am your disciple, and you are my teacher." Just as William was grinning foolishly, Kieran Shirwang raised his eyebrows and snapped his fingers. Time rewound. William felt as though time had slowed down. Old Leather's words and kneeling posture were replayed in reverse. Then, he retreated behind the door. It was as though Old Leather's timeline had been rewound. When William saw this scene, he was dumbfounded. Old Leather was very powerful. Wasn't Old Leather's ability too insane? As expected of a fellow who could bring people back from the dead after becoming a saint. His ferocity was simply a mess. Kieran narrowed his eyes and was about to say something. Old Leather appeared again. He vomited blood as he pushed open the door. Just like before, he knelt in front of Kieran and hugged Kieran's leg as he repeated the same words. William raised his eyebrows. Kieran Shirwang raised his eyebrows curiously. He glanced at William and then at Old Leather, who was covered in cracks and blood. He sighed and said, "Your time endowment is good, but you're a warrior while I'm a mage." Old Leather's ears were bleeding, but he gritted his teeth and said, "Teacher, no matter what you teach me, I'll learn it seriously. It doesn't matter if it's magic or other things." Kieran gazed deeply at Old Leather. Since Old Leather could walk out from William's time rewinding spell, it proved that his time endowment was good. Back in the Frost Empire, Kieran had seen many students with time endowment in a magic academy, but he had no intention of teaching them. This was because the highest limit of growth for those people was undoubtedly great magicians or magisters. Perhaps in the eyes of many people, being a time enchanter was already very powerful, but Kieran was confident that he could become a sage. What was the point of teaching a disciple who could not even become a legendary mage? That would be a disgrace to him. Kieran hesitated for a long time, then said in a low voice, "The Elven Queen asked me to teach you some knowledge about time. You can attend a class with me. If you perform the best out of everyone, I might accept you as my disciple for Prince William's sake." "Thank you." Old Leather could not help but smile. After watching Kieran Shirwang leave, blood seeped out of Old Leather's pores. William patted Old Leather, who was sprawled on the ground, and asked, "Will you die?" "I've suffered from the backlash of time." "Oh, that means you won't die. Don't waste the life potion." "Thank you, Prince William." Old Leather lay motionlessly on the ground, covered in blood. NPCs were different from players. William, who was a player, could easily enjoy the thrill of leveling up. After learning skills, he could continuously level up. But most NPCs, even the gifted ones, needed to be taught by a teacher. The rarer an attribute talent was, the better a teacher was needed to teach it. Space and time were the same. On the other hand, Burn Cinder, Diablo, and the rest all had fire or metal innate attributes. However, there were too many people with such innate attributes. They could obtain information from various channels about how to break through to the next realm or how to grow. Therefore, they didn't need to find a mentor at all. Old Leather, on the other hand, was different. Ever since William had brought Old Leather to the City of Dawn, he had disrupted Old Leather's growth. As a result, Old Leather's training speed was not as fast as Burn Cinder and the others. Hence, William felt the need to find a teacher for Old Leather. There were many legends of the time element, but since he had encountered Old Man Time, there was no reason for him to let him off. Just like Bernice Frost, the Elven Queen, who was in the Saint Realm, could also sense that Kieran Time was extraordinary. She even allowed him to stay in the city and teach the time element professionals of the three races. Time passed slowly until the last day of the war. In front of all the players, William officially announced that the Dawn Mercenary Team would be the vanguard army. They would attack the Orc Empire's 10 iron fortresses the next morning. After the players received the quest, there was a lot of discussion. However, he did not seem to be afraid of death, because they had gotten used to it after a while. As long as Prince William had a war-related quest, they would be killed. Therefore, When they looked at the rewards, they knew what they had to do. Now, all of them were rubbing their palms in preparation for the super war the next day. But the other pure-blooded elves didn't dare to believe it. Because what was the objective of William's quest? You might not believe it. It was not to occupy any iron fortress. It was not to kill a lot of enemies. It was not to stand on the iron fortress walls for long. It was to use the number of arrows, cannons, magic cannons, and heavy crossbows, TSK. It was such a perverted and bloody mission, but the chosen ones didn't resist at all. This proved that the Lord of the City of Dawn had good governance. But in fact, the players didn't care about their own deaths. As long as they could make up for their losses with experience and equipment, they would not suffer any losses. Many siege strategies had appeared on the forum. One of them caught the attention of the players. It was Chu Yochio's siege strategy. Hello, everyone. The mission given by Prince William seems to be a suicide mission. But in reality, it is to take over the city. Of course, I won't tell you how to take over the city, but I can share some experience of suicide missions. Everyone can revive 6 times. In the first 2 waves of suicide missions, you don't need to wear any equipment. You just need to wear a coat and hold a long sword. When the orcs see that we can't withstand a single blow, they might rush out and fight with the vanguard of the players to gain momentum. At the same time, we can use up a lot of cannons and arrows in the city. After the first 2 waves of suicide missions, the defending orcs might notice something. But the orcs were a group of boorish men who were having fun killing. They wouldn't change their strategy. But if we die twice, we will only lose some experience and equipment. We have already gained from the mission rewards. When it comes to the 3rd and 4th waves of orcs, if you have a second set of equipment, you will change into the equipment that you have previously used and continue to fight the orcs. We have to maintain the rhythm of suicide missions. The price of suicide missions is to let the orc army feel our strength. But don't scare them. Remember, if you die earlier, you must choose to revive at the commander's flag. Don't revive on the spot. Everyone has to gather and charge together, because the 5th and 6th waves are the most important 2 waves. At that time, we will have to put on all our equipment and fight them head-on. Just as many players were wondering why they had to fight a tough battle, the post was filled with questions. Chu Yochio suddenly posted a hidden mission. It was that after the players of the City of Dawn used up a certain number of arrows and cannons, they would organize a regular army to charge. As such, the players understood that Prince William had the intention to take down a few fortresses. But this kind of obscure news was intended to be released at the last minute. Why did William specially give this hidden mission to Chu Yochio? He wanted to make the players feel the importance of this mission through Chu Yochio. After all, William was an NPC. He couldn't formulate a strategy that would send the players to their deaths. But Chu Yochio was a master strategist. Not only was it for the victory of the City of Dawn, but it was also for the hidden mission and the main storyline mission. He would try his best to make the players and the regular army cooperate and have a tacit understanding. Time passed. Soon, it was the next morning. The 18 orc military fortresses were connected in a straight line. The distance between each fortress was no more than 10 kilometers. No one planned to bypass these fortresses to attack the Black Great Wall. But when the first ray of sunlight appeared in the morning, countless orcs who were waiting for the battle saw an endless black line appearing on the snowy plains. It was an endless number of soldiers. It was the army of the City of Dawn. It looked like it was a messy army of players. They saw a player suddenly roared as he charged forward. Subsequently, a total of 10 black seas rushed towards 10 of the military fortresses in a disorderly manner. The orc commanders were guarding the fortresses were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. The berserkers and legion commanders of the Frost Empire were also dumbfounded. It turned out that the chosen ones were even more reckless than the berserkers. Chapter 386. There were 18 military fortresses of the Orc Empire. They were large fortresses that could house 80,000 to 100,000 soldiers. The 4 walls were 50 meters tall, and the walls were inlaid with densely packed sharp barbs. The barbs looked like they could be placed on top of the siege ladders, but whether it was climbing the ladders or accidentally falling down, they would not be able to withstand it. The only possibility was to be pierced through by the barbs. There was no possibility of survival. Of course, the height of the city walls was not a problem. It was only used to defend against professionals below the middle and beginner level. As for the advanced and grandmaster professionals, they could only use the large number of heavy-duty crossbows and magic cannons to fight head-on. Other than that, there was no other way. The City of Dawn had 18 suicide legions consisting of 100,000 chosen ones. In the first wave, William only let 10 suicide legions charge towards the Orc military fortresses. Or rather, His Royal Highness did not give any orders during the first wave of attack. The players were like idiots who were not afraid of death. They directly charged towards the Orc military fortresses. The vanguard army had no order, no formation, and no instructions. Many onlookers were taken aback. Whether it was the spectating envoys of the Frost Empire or the Elfin princes and legion commanders, they could not help but wonder what William was going to do. It was possible that the City of Dawn was nothing. After all, rumors were just rumors. No matter how many victories the City of Dawn achieved, or if they were the only victors of the Darkness invasion, they would not be able to make an accurate conclusion until they met. But the regular legions of the City of Dawn were here. The 100,000 Dawn legions were hiding in the Frost Forest, secretly preparing for battle. 2 high-spirited Griffin legions, 6 blade-like cavalry legions. 3 of them were White Thunder Warhorse legions, while the other 3 were Black Dragon's Blood Warhorse legions. There was also a Dragon's Blood legion that was filled with endless fighting spirit. This Dragon's Blood legion consisted of 3,500 soldiers. They wore dragon scale armor. Every part of their bodies was covered with the same elemental dragon scales: ice, wood, water, fire, earth, and darkness. There were 6 different elemental dragons, blood warriors. Many sharp-eyed onlookers discovered that there were hundreds of dragon speakers among the dragon's blood warriors. But they were not dragon followers. Many people were dumbfounded by this situation. They knew that dragon speakers could only be created by the dragon race using dragon language magic. What was going on in the City of Dawn? In particular, many people were wondering how many dragons William had killed to form such a trump-card Dragonblood Legion. After all, not everyone had Moses' ability to use the dragon crystal to strengthen a Dragonblood warrior with every drop of Dragonblood. The soldiers of the Dawn army stood in the cold wind and snow. Each of them had the aura of a veteran. It was because of these 100,000 soldiers that no one dared to underestimate William. Could it be that this group of heaven's chosen ones are all so unrestrained? There's no discipline at all. Look at the regular army and then look at the Dawn mercenary team. The difference is too big. The City of Dawn has more than 2 million chosen ones. I feel like it's a loss. That's right. It's definitely a huge loss. The Empire originally planned to recruit some chosen ones. But if the chosen ones are like this, I feel that it's useless even if they can come back to life. Will they just be a waste of resources? Many people were talking about whether the chosen one was worth using. When the player army was less than 5,000 meters away from the military fortress, they cooperated and showed how useless they were. Because the Orc army's cannons, enchanted heavy crossbows, and catapults had started their first wave of attack. Everyone could only hear the loud rumbling sounds. The explosive cannons traveled at the speed of sound and exploded in the center of the battlefield. The deafening sounds of the cannons were continuous. The player army was in a complete mess from the bombardment. Almost every cannonball could blast at least 8 to 9 players into the sky. Instantly, there were signs of flowers blooming on the icy sea and snowy plains. Waves of players were blasted into white light and fragments. Catapults streaked across the sky like a meteor shower. The players dodged if they could. However, because there were too many of them, they were too lazy to dodge. They allowed the catapults to smash them to death in the snowy plains. The heavy crossbows were accompanied by sonic booms as they shot toward the players. Basically, every arrow could pierce through the players like candied fruits on a stick. However, it was the first charge in 30 minutes. Almost 1/3 of the 10 million players had perished in the battle. A total of 300,000 players had returned to the center of the commander's flag to revive. The battle was a tragic sight. The messengers of the Frost Empire and some elves could not help but swallow their saliva when they saw this scene. I remember that the more times the Chosen Ones die, the lower their combat power will be. According to this method of death, they will not be able to fight after a while, right? Yes, I heard that after dying 6 times, this group of Chosen Ones will disappear into thin air. They will only reappear the next day. An army of 1 million Chosen Ones did not even manage to climb up the city wall. 1/3 of them have perished. Let's go. There's nothing to see. Some people chose to leave the battlefield. They no longer had any expectations for the City of Dawn's vanguard army. But many people did not leave. They want to know if the regular army of the City of Dawn would fight today. But the possibility was small. As long as the Lord of the City of Dawn was not a lunatic, he would not use his trump card to fight such a battle. Back to the Death Legion. The more players died, the more excited the defending orcs became. This was because the Chosen Ones were living targets. The orcs were getting more and more excited as they killed. It was like a fat otaku fighting zombies in the 21st century. Simply put, the orcs could not stop. Don't bother about me. I can kill 6 to 7 enemies with 1 arrow. It's fine if you don't give me battle achievements. Why are you stopping me for shooting? What? It takes a lot of effort to make the cannons. Are you kidding me? When I shoot, there will be a huge explosion. More than 10 enemies will be blasted into the sky. I have not encountered such a dense formation for many years. Why don't you let me shoot a few shots to have some fun? Are you beastly? Many of the supervisors were speechless. Some of them even started to fire the cannons. It was so fun. Anyway, the orcs who had gone berserk had their blood boiling. They could not stop the orcs, and the commander could not be bothered. After all, these were the orcs. The orcs mustered all their strength and continuously shot heavy-duty arrows, stones, and cannons. Just like that, the battle lasted for 2 hours. The army of 1 million players was completely annihilated. Countless arrows, cannon shrapnel, and huge rocks littered the icy plains before everyone's eyes. The players were crestfallen, and they resurrected in the middle of the commander flag without any will to fight. The players had to think about how long it would take for them to wear their equipment. Witnessing this scene, an epic Blackleaf elf warrior came to William. He was one of the deputy commanders of this battle, Halder. He patted William's shoulder and said in a deep voice, "Prince William, do you want to stop the attack?" "No need. The Chosen Ones are here to die." William shook his head with a stern gaze. Like a tyrant, he waved the commander flag again. The players started the second wave of attack without any rest. Halder could only shake his head and leave. He was a Blackleaf elf. As the prince of the Blackleaf elves, William had the responsibility and obligation to lead the battle in the City of Dawn. But William was the Lord of the City of Dawn. He had accepted the mission of being the vanguard. Nobody could stop him from sending his subordinates to die. Especially the most crucial thing was the death of 1 million players. The orcs not only felt the thrill of killing, but they also realized that their bodies had become stronger. At the military fortress, many orcs clenched their fists and shouted that killing the Chosen Ones would make them stronger. The orc commanders also realized this problem. They realized that their soldiers had become stronger after killing the Chosen Ones. Even they themselves felt slightly stronger after killing the Heaven's Chosen One. Could it be that killing the Chosen Ones will allow us to devour their souls to strengthen ourselves? When they saw the second wave of the player army, many orc commanders reported the situation. Hence, they made a great decision. They would leave the fortress to fight, because the orcs who were responsible for the cannons, heavy crossbows, and catapults were not very powerful. If they could become stronger by killing the Chosen Ones. Hence, after killing the Chosen Ones, they would send their close combat legions to deal with the unmotivated orcs. Hence, after the second wave of the player army attacked, the orcs at the Steel Fortress launched an even fiercer barrage of cannons, catapults, and heavy crossbows. Large numbers of players collapsed on the road. Many orcs did not even notice that some players had no weapons in their hands. More than 300,000 members of the player army died. The players lazily carried the siege ladders and were about to climb the city walls. The gates of these steel fortresses opened. 40 to 50,000 orcs clad in black iron armor roared as they charged out. The trap that the orc commanders were worried about did not appear. After all, the orc army was like a flood of steel, crushing the densely packed player army like they were nothing more than dry weeds. Many players could not kill an orc even if they risked their lives. Only when the orcs charged too recklessly and were surrounded by more than 10 players would there be casualties. Countless people saw this scene. They did not know what to say. Were these the chosen ones? Weaklings. The weapons in their hands were shining brightly. Could it be that they couldn't cause damage to those intermediate orcs? Death. They died again and again. The player army was like that. Time and time again, they charged forward without fear of death. The second wave of players was annihilated. The beastmen once again felt that they had become stronger, and the commanders also managed to snatch quite a few kills. They also discovered that their strength was real and permanent. Hence, the orcs couldn't stop their bloodlust. The player army was killed for the third time. The fourth time, he was escorted all the way until nightfall. Until now, the orcs were no longer worried that the Dawn mercenary team would attack the fortress. Instead, they were worried that the Dawn mercenary team would not attack the fortress. They were in a state of excitement. They shouted for the chosen ones to fight again. Nowadays, the beastmen didn't even eat or drink. They only held their weapons tightly in an attempt to steal ahead and become stronger. They even wished that the chosen ones would continue to kill them. It would be best if they could kill them until they reached the next realm. When William saw this scene, he knew that the players had succeeded in giving experience points. His Royal Highness narrowed his eyes and muttered, "If there are no accidents, I will take down all 10 military fortresses for you today." However, the epic experts guarding these 10 fortresses have to be dealt with by someone else. William sent a telepathic message to the elves to borrow some epic experts. They were responsible for holding the fort at critical moments. Ever since the elves knew that William had killed nearly 4 million players, they did not have any expectations. Many elves who disliked William started to criticize him, but it was necessary to have epic experts to hold the fort. William could not reject them. This meant that the City of Dawn was going to launch an all-out attack. Hence, the envoys were tired of the scene of people being killed and had all left. There were only 10 epic experts holding the fort. William launched an all-out attack, except for the 1 million players who had just arrived. The remaining 800,000 players who had not died even once were sent out by William. But in the cold Arctic, it was normal to have a snowy night. Mages from all sides were casting magic to block the enemy's vision. No one realized that the 1 million players were changing their equipment. At this moment, the 10 epic rankers seemed to have noticed the situation. Oh, these fellows had killed 4 waves of players, but they were not wearing any equipment. It was no wonder that they were so weak. There was something going on behind the scenes. Were the 800,000 new soldiers going to fight? Hiss, why were the dragon's blood warriors at the back of the Chosen One's army? Wait a minute. They could no longer differentiate between the Chosen Ones and the regular soldiers. They were all wearing the same clothes. Gosh. Cannons? There were more than 600 cannons? You guys have a lot of private jobs. Why didn't you use them in the past? It turned out that the Chosen Ones of the Dawn mercenary team knew military formations. They also knew that the formation should be more scattered. That was right. The distance between the players was more than a few meters. They would not be hit by the cannons, heavy arrows, and catapults. As the army of players took on a different formation and displayed a different aura, the 10 epic rank big shots started to feel that this battle was getting interesting. The orcs saw that the players' formation had become more scattered. The commanders started to complain. These fools were getting smarter. They should stop using cannons, heavy crossbows, and catapults. The 4 waves of defense had depleted their reserves. They were waiting for the envoys to deliver the supplies. There were many regular soldiers mixed in the player army. The orcs couldn't tell how many soldiers the City of Dawn had sent. Their scattered formations and large numbers of soldiers made it impossible for the orcs to tell how many soldiers the City of Dawn had sent. More importantly, there was one more point. The orcs were in a killing frenzy. They had never come into contact with the players. After killing 4 waves of players, they thought that the players were a bunch of pushovers. In their hearts, an ordinary orc warrior could easily defeat hundreds of players. What if they ran out of supplies for the cannons, heavy arrows, and catapults? Of course, they would face them head-on. Gosh, it was time to kill the orcs. When the player army charged forward, they only encountered sparse arrows. When they were less than 2,000 meters away from the military fortresses, 80,000 orcs rushed out from the fortresses. They wanted to destroy this group of chosen ones in one fell swoop. However, the situation was different, because when both sides clashed with each other, it was not the players who were on the losing side. It was the orcs who were originally arrogant. Retreat, retreat, retreat. The orc commanders shouted crazily. It was a pity. It was too late. Everything was too late. The bloodthirsty orcs did not believe that the chosen ones had become so powerful. They thought that it was an illusion. An illusion. Chapter 387. The weather in the far north was bone-chilling. When the snowstorm appeared, it sounded like the roars of the devils from hell. The army of the Dawn army faced the snowstorm like a torrent of steel. They stepped on the snowy grassland that was full of potholes and killed their way towards the steel fortresses. The massive army of players was as powerful as the orcs of the same level after equipping their equipment. Previously, hundreds of players could not defeat one orc. Now it was possible to defeat them in 3v1, 2v1, or even 1v1. Unless they were facing a boss orc with a powerful bloodline, the players would not be afraid of the orcs, who had low combat power. Hence, when the two armies clashed, the orcs, who had been fighting for a whole day, suffered heavy losses. When they were surrounded by the army of players, the orc army was one-sided. Many orc warriors were killed by the swords, battle energy, and magic. The orcs were not fools. Under the command of the legion leader, they quickly switched to a defensive formation. They tried to retreat while fighting. However, the players were also a little resentful. They had died 4 times just now, and the orcs had killed them like dogs. Now that it was time for revenge, how could they show mercy? They wielded their swords and slashed at the shield-bearers or leaped up to kill the orcs at the back of the shield-bearers. Chuliochio was no longer the commander. He led countless players and stepped on the heads of the shield-bearers and leaped up to kill the orcs at the back. He stabbed an orc's chest with his long sword in midair. He pulled out his sword. Hot blood splashed on his face, but he did not hesitate. He turned around and released his sword energy. In a strange posture, he slashed at the neck of an orc. The opponent held the sword in his neck with his left hand. His mouth was bleeding, but he still wanted to stab Chuliochio. But Chuliochio's hands pressed down with all his might, causing the opponent to retreat a few meters. Then, he kicked the opponent away. Stab! The orc covered his bleeding neck and fell heavily to the ground. He could not get up again. Hence, 2 orcs, who were fatally injured, died in his hands. This was the way to fight on the battlefield, using the simplest method to hit the enemy's vitals, directly ending their lives. Because there were too many enemies on the battlefield, if they had to use skills for every move and fight the enemy head-on, for these intermediate professionals, sooner or later, their dough energy value would not be enough. Chuliochio was accompanied by all the professional players of the City of Dawn. They could display their abilities and techniques on this battlefield. Xiao Ayan was a shield warrior. She was only an intermediate professional, but her epic-level suit could really make up for the difference in attributes between players and orcs. It could even suppress a small number of orcs. She rampaged through the orc army like a female Tyrannosaurus. Chanli Joga had already activated his dragon blood transformation when he charged into the Beastman's battle formation. He was also wearing an epic set. Against this group of mid-tier beastmen, he could be said to be a ferocious beast with boundless strength. With 2 swords in his hands, he swept through the army. At least, when he was in his dragon blood transformation, very few beastmen of the same rank could stop him. Forever Alone also led the players of Golden Age on a killing spree. As professional players, all of them had intermediate epic sets. In a short period of time, they had created a bloody path for the player army. The strength of the Chosen Ones had suddenly increased. But the orcs did not only have to face them. They also had to face a large number of mages and countless rangers. Magic spells and arrows almost covered the entire sky. Not a single part of the battlefield was safe. There were casualties everywhere. But at this moment, in order to protect the large orc army, the commander of the orcs had no choice but to let his advanced orc legion charge into the battlefield. That was because every military fortress had an army of 3,000 high-ranked orcs within it. They were the real trump cards. They leaped down from the city walls. They were like death gods, unleashing their ultimate skills. Once again, the Chosen Ones were killed by the swords and died tragically in the snowy land. But this time, the players were ordered to revive on the spot. Instead of reviving at the commander flag, some players might choose to revive at the commander flag because they were afraid of losing their equipment. But in this snowy land, the players' blood was boiling. There was no room for retreat in this war. The flag of the City of Dawn was raised high. Whether it was for the mission rewards or for the glory of the City of Dawn, more players would choose to revive on the spot and fight to the death. Although it was just a legion of advanced orc professionals, they were able to stop the player army in every military fortress. But with the sound of a horn, the cannons that had been aimed at the city walls fired at the same time. Kaboom! Almost at the same time, the 10 military fortresses were engulfed in the fireworks of the cannons. Many orcs, standing on the city walls, did not have time to react before they were reduced to ashes in the flames. Potholes kept appearing on the city walls. Arrow towers were overturned one after another. Many orc archers were engulfed in flames. If they did not die, they would jump down the city walls and burrow into the snowy land. It was a pity. They were killed by the countless spikes outside the city walls. They hung on the sharp spikes and spat out blood. Their eyes were filled with fear and helplessness as they were burned to death in the flames. It cannot be helped. William had added some flammable kerosene to the core of the cannons. It was a very effective fire buff. Of course, the cannons did not cause any damage to the other parts of the battlefield. After all, the two armies were entangled. If the cannons were fired at the center of the battlefield, it would be mutually damaging, but the continuous bombardment of the cannons on the city walls was enough to make the fortresses, which did not have enough military supplies, very uncomfortable. The archers did not have the ability to retaliate. Just as the advanced orc legion was like a pack of wolves and sheep, the advanced legions of the City of Dawn also appeared. They were like shadows hidden in the dark. They were like tigers and wolves hiding in the sea of people. With a ferocious momentum, they resolutely attacked. High-tier humans, elves, and half-elves wearing full sets of dark golden armor charged into the army of high-tier orcs in an instant. They were superior in terms of equipment, combat power, and race. The advanced legions of the City of Dawn displayed an irresistible force. But the most dazzling thing was not the others. It was the Dragonblood Legion that William had painstakingly built. They wore dragon-scale armor and wielded weapons made of dragon teeth, dragon scales, and dragon bones. They were like butchers on the battlefield. In an instant, they destroyed the formation of the advanced Orc Legion. Because the weakest among them was an advanced, and their bloodline was at least advanced. All of them were equipped with epic equipment sets. This was the strongest legion under William's command. It was also the strongest legion under the command of the human empires. A boss legion, like the Dragon's Blood, was one of the strongest legions, no matter which continent it was on. When the Dragonblood Legion appeared on the battlefield, they used their transformation ability. Their golden eyes shone in the snowy night. They looked even more frightening than the orcs' eyes. The majority of the Beastman commanders were epic experts. As soon as they saw the Dragonblood Legion, they wanted to kill these fellows with limitless potential. But the epic elves also appeared in the center of the battlefield. His gaze met hers indifferently. When a dragon's blood warrior transformed, dragon scales would continuously grow under their skin. Even if someone managed to pierce through their dragon scale armor, it would be very difficult to pierce through the last layer of dragon scales. "Kill!" roared the Dragonblood Legion's leader. Hundreds of dragon speakers swung their left fists forward at the same time. Boom! Hundreds of colorful dragon breaths bloomed on the battlefield. This was a weakened draconic magic. However, when these draconic magic spells were combined, it was like a roaring fire dragon rampaging across the battlefield, turning countless enemies into ashes. When the high-rank beastmen saw the terrifying Dragonblood Legion, they immediately began to panic. Basically, he didn't have any intention of stopping them. However, the Dragonblood warriors didn't care about that. They were like killing gods, fiercely charging through the battlefield, leading their army to kill the Beastman warriors that had yet to return to the city. This was a one-sided battle. The advanced legions of the City of Dawn had 50,000 soldiers. They were located under 10 military fortresses, and they relied on their overall advantage to deal heavy blows to the orcs who had killed 4 million players. Did the 4 million players give up their lives and experience points? But they had killed so many orcs. Could it be that they couldn't level up? It was obvious. They couldn't even level up. The bloody battle lasted for half an hour. Each of the 10 orc fortresses had lost 1/3 of their soldiers. There were no more than 60,000 soldiers left in each stronghold. The defeated orcs had finally returned to the fortresses. However, just as they were about to close the city gates, the Grandmaster experts of the City of Dawn finally stepped onto the battlefield. There were hundreds of Grandmaster professionals. They charged towards the south gate of the 10 military fortresses. The advanced professionals of the City of Dawn also leaped onto the city walls, which had no defenses. William also chose a military fortress. Hence, countless players and the warriors of the City of Dawn saw a bolt of lightning descending from the sky. The bolt of lightning landed in front of the south gate. Countless orcs who wanted to enter the city were sent flying by the shockwave. Their bodies were covered with lightning bolts as they flew in all directions. "Close the city gates," an orc shouted. If those fellows couldn't return, so be it. The city gates had to be closed. An orc decisively cut off the chain that connected the city gates. Crack! Rumble! Everyone watched as the steel city gates were about to crash into the ground. A figure suddenly appeared below the city gates. He single-handedly held up the sinking city gates. The ground at his feet were rooted and was constantly cracking. However, William single-handedly held up the steel city gates that weighed tens of thousands of pounds. The position that William's left hand was holding up was constantly changing shape and melting. But the most important thing was the prince in their eyes was being attacked by countless orcs, including some Grandmaster orcs. However, even though the man in front of them was being attacked, he didn't flinch. He just pointed his long sword at everyone and the countless orcs that were attacking him. He calmly said, "Have you had enough?" The orcs gulped, and even some Grandmaster orcs looked at him in horror. This guy in front of them, who was not even wearing any equipment, was simply a monster. He had suffered so many attacks, but he was still unscathed. William tilted his head. The moment his left hand released the city gates, he suddenly let out a loud shout. With an even faster speed, he hammered the bottom of the city gates from the bottom up. Bang! This steel gate, which was unknown how heavy it was forcibly smashed back. This deformed steel gate broke through the city wall and rushed into the sky. Finally, it flipped and fell into the inner city. Countless people witnessed this scene. They were in a daze. They didn't know what to say. William clenched his fists and softly said, "How about I give this fist a name? City Crusher." Chapter 388. From the moment William punched the city gate, like a tidal wave, countless players swarmed into the military fortress from both sides and fought with the orcs. This was a battle between swords and knives. This was a battle between races. This was also a battle of iron and blood. No one could retreat. In a few minutes, rows of orcs fell at the hands of the players. Large groups of players transformed into white light and revived. They fought with the orcs, until the orc corpses at the city gate piled up into a new wall, until the battlefield in the city was filled with blood. Countless broken limbs appeared before the players' eyes, feet, and even stuck to the city wall, until the players could not advance. They were blocked by a group of advanced orcs who had returned to help. But even so, No one retreated. They charged forward with all their might. They prayed to inflict even a little damage on their enemies. Arrows streaked across the sky above their heads. The cannons behind them had stopped firing. In the current situation, they could only move forward, and forward. At this moment, William wielded his long and narrow black sword. He pushed aside the players and came to the front. Over 100 high-grade orcs were ordered to defend the area, and they cut down groups of players under their feet. When 6 of them saw William approaching, they drew their swords and slashed at William's head with pitch-black sword radiance that was tens of meters long. William did not stop. He wielded his long sword and slashed horizontally. Swoosh! The long and narrow sword energy that flashed with lightning swept hundreds of meters ahead. The sword energy that was still in midair was split into 2. The battle energy shields of 6 advanced orcs were instantly destroyed, and their corpses were split into 2. But even so, this lightning sword chi was still not blocked. It carried a boundless murderous aura as it approached the other advanced orcs. At this moment, a pale orc with a black metal gauntlet appeared in front of the sword energy. He raised his hand, and a huge palm made of battle energy crushed the thunder sword energy. Meanwhile, there were also several Grandmaster-level orcs here. However, William glanced at them. He could not be bothered to fight with them. He also waved his hand, and several Grandmaster experts appeared behind him. When the pale orc with the black metal gauntlet saw this, he shouted, "Kill!" The Grandmaster orc behind him charged towards his opponent at this moment. They could tell from their eyes that the professionals of the City of Dawn were stronger. But they could not retreat. Because the military fortress had already fallen, their current goal was to stall for time so that the soldiers who could not participate in the battle would retreat and the capable soldiers would be in front. Because as long as he could hold on, the Black Great Wall would send reinforcements that were stronger and more ferocious. However, they had underestimated William's treatment of NPCs with high-level bloodlines and above. An epic equipment set, a legendary grade secret manual, and a legendary grade weapon of the same grade. One sentence. The City of Dawn would always run out of money. No matter how much money they earned, they would run out of money again. It was because he had sacrificed too much for the professions under him. However, this method of spending money like flowing water was also enough for him to build an incomparably powerful army. The advanced warriors of the City of Dawn had occupied the city walls and were advancing into the city. The Dawn army had various advantages. Even if the orc warriors could break the battle energy shields of the orcs, they could not break the armor on their bodies. The Dawn army could break the armor, but they had various army buffs and bloodline bonuses. They had unimaginable health points and defensive capabilities. Burn Cinder, Lautner, Diablo, Violent Dragon, and Old Leather led the rest of the Dawn army and killed their way through the military fortresses. When the Dawn army charged into the orc fortresses, it was like a pack of wolves charging into a flock of sheep. It was a one-sided battle. When William saw the orc Grandmaster of Combat charging towards him, he had no intention of holding back at all. If he acted tough on the battlefield, more of his soldiers would die. He dashed towards the pale orc at an even faster speed. Both of them collided with a loud bang. Shock waves surged. The ground beneath William's feet sank. The Grandmaster orc hammered his fist on William's head, but it only made William's head tilt slightly. William's sword pierced through the orc's internal organs. Thunder and sword energy filled the orc's body, making it extremely difficult for him to breathe. Even his strength was weakened. The pale orc knew that he could not defeat William, but he still hammered William's head in an attempt to inflict more damage. However, the latter didn't seem to care about his inging fist and continued to charge forward. The two of them were like a ray of rainbow light. They broke through the walls that were built with countless corpses. Fresh blood, corpses, skulls, arms, and legs flew into the sky when the rainbow light passed by. Then, along with the snowflakes, they smashed into the crowd. But William did not stop charging. He grabbed the orc in front of him with one hand, and his arms suddenly became thicker. Then, he threw the orc forward like he was throwing a spear. Bang! The pale orc landed heavily on the other side of the north gate with a loud bang. A few orcs who were escaping were smashed into meat paste. The rest of the orcs stared blankly at William, who had broken through the defense circle. They wanted someone to stop him, but the pale orc did not die. Even though he had suffered such a heavy blow, he still staggered and tried to stand up. But William was faster. He had already reached the back of the pale orc. He grabbed the orc's head and violently threw it again. Another row of orc cavalrymen were knocked over along with their wolves. The pale orc was embedded in the city wall. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. A mount wolf, which was several meters long, flipped itself over and rushed towards William recklessly. But it was still in midair. William punched. The head of the ice wolf was smashed into its abdomen. It did not even have the chance to howl. It died tragically in front of William. Many orc warriors with spears rushed over. They wanted to stop William from approaching the north gate. But William merely clenched his fist. Crackle! Dozens of lightning bolts descended from the clouds. The surrounding orcs were hit one after another. All of them twitched and fell to the ground. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. It cannot be helped. William was an invincible professional of the same level. As long as it was not a legendary boss with extraordinary endowments, he could not stop William for more than a minute. And it was obvious. The Orc Empire was huge, but in such a military fortress, it seemed that such a being would not appear. Flay had just finished standing. A burly devil grandmaster warrior, who was about 3 meters tall, wore heavy armor, and held 2 blood-red hammers wrapped in chains. He slowly walked in front of Flay. "Oh my God, let's go. It's the blood hammer of the devil race. I did not expect such a strong person to be hidden in our military fortress." Many orc soldiers could not help but gasp. In the Orc Empire, whether it was an epic, grandmaster, or an advanced professional, they all had a ranking. Among them, the Blood Hammer Hand was one of the top 10 experts among the grandmaster rankers. It had to be known. The Orc Empire had a population of thousands. The Devil Race also had a population of more than 3 million. The Devils were born warriors. Their bloodline was not weaker than that of the Elves. It greatly increased the number of experts in the Orc Empire. So in this Orc Empire located in the extreme north, there were at least tens of thousands of Grandmaster professionals. And among these tens of thousands of Grandmaster experts, he was ranked in the top 5. Without a doubt, the strength of this blood hammer of the devil race could not be underestimated. When William discovered this guy, he raised his eyebrows. As expected, the Orc Empire did not intend to give up the 10 military fortresses immediately. They wanted to continue struggling. They had even secretly planted many experts in the military fortress. Their goal was to prevent the epic experts from being held back and the Grandmaster experts from being unstoppable. That way, the steel fortress would fall before the reinforcements could arrive. At this moment, the gates of the Great Ice Wall kept opening. An orc army that looked like a black dragon was rushing towards the 10 military fortresses in the bone-chilling wind and snow. The distance between the two sides was less than 20 kilometers. If the professionals ran at full speed, it would not take long for them to reach the fortress. This was the main reason why the military fortresses did not have teleportation portals. In other words, William had to take down the military fortresses within 30 minutes. If not, when the orc reinforcements arrived, all the advantages of victory would be gone. But after William's vanguard army gained such an advantage, the elves were not idiots. Their cavalry had also rushed over and joined forces with the Dawn Cavalry and Griffin Legion to stop the reinforcements from arriving. But even so, compared to the endless stream of orc reinforcements, the elven reinforcements were far from enough. The Dawn army, which was split into 10 groups, could not completely occupy all 10 steel fortresses. But long before William had met this powerful Grandmaster professional, William had been very cautious. William had a plan. That was if there was an accident. The City of Dawn would give up 5 of the steel fortresses. The troops would move to the nearest military fortress. They would attack together. This was a method that had no other choice. However, as the leader of the Dawn army, he had to know how strong and how many soldiers he had. Perhaps if they split into 10 groups, they could still achieve victory. But in the end, no matter how strong the individual strength of the Dawn Army was, how many of them would be left? There were only a handful. The Dragonblood Legion could be annihilated, especially as the Vanguard Army. William's performance was outstanding. Out of the 10 strongholds, taking down 5 in a day was already a huge achievement. Was he going to give up everything in the City of Dawn for this bloody 10-year war? The achievement of taking down 5 fortresses was enough to shut the mouths of many people who looked down on him. There were losses and gains in war. In the eyes of many generals, the military fortresses that seemed to have been taken down were achievements that could not be given up. But William was not just a general. He was also a lord. He had also changed from a player to a native. As a lord, he used his authority to bring warriors from the southernmost part of the continent to the extreme north to fight a war that had nothing to do with them. However, he also had the right to try his best to bring this group of living warriors back in one piece. War is never won with one victory. I hope to minimize the losses. Even if I lose some achievement, it's better to have fewer casualties because you are loyal to me. I will repay your loyalty in the same way. William was a lord. He would not sacrifice his life for his loyal subordinates. However, he would try his best to do what a lord should do, which was to use equipment, secret manuals, potions, magical crystals, and most of the wealth he had obtained to make his warriors stronger. He hoped that they would sweat more on the training ground. He also hoped that they would not bleed on the battlefield. He was a person who cherished his life, but was not too stingy. Those who treated him well, those who treated him badly, those who treated him badly, he would repay them 100-fold. He would repay them with kindness and enmity. Those enemies in his notebook would die sooner or later. None of them would be spared. Damn, you even have such a weird talent. William felt that he had met his match. It had to be known that there were many kinds of endowments in the world of gods, and they were ever-changing. There was never a fixed set of endowments. In the eyes of ordinary people, William's thunder endowment was considered a common endowment. For example, he was born with a handsome face. It was a rare talent that was 1 in a million. It was similar to the gravity talent in that they both had abilities beyond the imagination of ordinary people. It was just that one was good at fighting while the other was good at making friends. However, this was not the end. The Bloodhammer clenched its fist at William. Rumble. Countless rocks, corpses, swords, and armor on the ground smashed towards William from all directions. His Royal Highness the Prince retreated rapidly. As he knocked over the obstacles with his body, his thunderbolt finger burst with dazzling lightning. It broke through all obstacles and crashed into the chest of the Bloodhammer hand. It was a pity. The muscular tyrant did not dodge. He allowed the lightning, which was full of impact and penetrating power, to penetrate his chest armor and create a bloody hole in his body. But at this moment, he also swung the heavy hammer with the chain and smashed it towards the prince's head with a whistling sound. William raised his left hand to the god and brazenly blocked in front of him. While blocking the hammer, his body was instantly smashed into the ground, leaving only his head exposed. But the Bloodhammer did not have the chance to resist. At the same time, another hammer sliced through the air and swept across the ground. Damn, if I don't show my prowess, do you think I'm an orange cat? William's body instantly transformed into the body of Holy Thunder. He rushed out of the soil without any obstruction and charged towards the Bloodhammer like a bolt of lightning. The Bloodhammer did not expect William to have such a move. The Bloodhammer used countless gravitational forces, but his speed was still not restricted. He watched helplessly as the Bloodhammer arrived in front of him. At this moment, a violent slash with the power of thunder slashed down. Countless bolts of lightning bloomed in the sky. A thunder sword energy that was hundreds of meters long slashed heavily towards the Bloodhammer's head with the momentum of splitting mountains and splitting the earth. However, it was unimaginable. The Bloodhammer let go of the chain hammer. His hands were filled with bloody light as he grasped the sword energy that could kill a person. Even though the Bloodhammer was forced to kneel on one knee and the ground around him exploded, he still managed to block the sword energy. The blood hammer was not only powerful in his hammer, but also in his hands. It was a pity that after William used his skill, he revealed his true body from the body of Holy Thunder. The sword of Hegme in William's hand had reached the blood hammer's face. The murderous sword edge was about to pierce the blood hammer's forehead. A shock wave, filled with gravitational forces, suddenly spread out. William could not control himself and was sent flying away. The blood hammer slowly stood up. He touched his helmet that had been pierced by the sword energy and a few drops of blood on his forehead. Once again, he used gravitational forces to forcefully uproot the north gate. With a deafening roar, he smashed it towards William. William gritted his teeth and blasted the left hand of the Thunder God. The steel gate was smashed away. However, the blood hammer hand seized this opportunity. At the same time, he swung the two heavy hammers that were wrapped in chains and smashed them towards William with a sonic boom. William, who had just smashed the steel gate, once again felt an unbearable gravitational force. But this time, he did not have the body of Holy Thunder. His power points could not be judged correctly every time. This time, he failed. He watched helplessly as the two hammers on his left and right closed in on him. He could not avoid them. He activated the defensive skill of the Sacred Shield of Light. Dozens of sacred shields appeared and enveloped his entire body. However, under the influence of the huge force and gravitational forces, the two chained hammers exploded with unimaginable lethality and gravitational force. The Sacred Shield of Light was like a thin piece of glass that did not obstruct William. William roared angrily and stretched out his arms. He chose to use his hands to block the two hammers. Bang! Crack, crack! Blood splattered from between the hammers. A badly mangled figure slowly fell to the ground. Under the immense pressure and gravitational force, his left hand of the Thunder God was unharmed, but his arm was smashed into pieces. His right arm was instantly turned into a pile of minced meat. William's entire body was flattened. He finally felt the crushing power of the Thunder God. It was an unstoppable crushing power. William had added points to his power and agility respectively. If there were no accidents, the blood hammer only added points to his power. The muscular blood hammer did not care about the speed of others. In his gravitational field, he was a god. It could be said that a person with gravitational endowment basically possessed the epic realm in advance. His opponents not only had to dodge the two hammers that were entangled with magic chains, but they also had to fight against the gravitational field. It was hopeless. However, just when the blood hammer was about to completely kill William, his body emitted the light of life. In an instant, William's injuries had mostly recovered. From the start of the battle until now, it had only been 1 minute. William's resurrection armor was gone. If not for his thick skin and many defensive endowments, he would have been KO'd. When the two of them looked at each other again, they felt that their opponent was a little troublesome. One was worried that the blood hammer could resurrect continuously. The other was considering how to kill him. Meanwhile, at the north of the 10 military fortresses, 5 groups of cavalrymen, each of which had nearly 10,000 soldiers, finally arrived. The vanguard of the Orc reinforcements had arrived. There were not too many of them. They were also Orc cavalrymen. They were the Mount Wolf cavalrymen of the Orc Empire. Each of them was riding on a long, wide, armored Mount Wolf. Advanced versus advanced. Heavy cavalry versus heavy cavalry. In this situation, advanced professionals would be easily shot to death if they flew. Hence, the advanced professionals did not fight in the sky. Instead, they fought on the ground. There was no doubt about it. The cavalry of the Orc Empire was not weak. In particular, the Mount Wolves had advantages that the dragon's blood war horses did not. Their mouths were sharper, and their movements were more agile. When a Mount Wolf charged, they were not as fast as the dragon's blood war horses. They needed to have explosive power. However, if the two armies were to engage in battle, the ones who would suffer heavy casualties would definitely be the war horses and cavalry. Christian was the former Legion commander of the Fearless Legion. He was also the half-elf lord who had defected to William. He rode on his warhorse and looked at the Mount Wolf cavalrymen who had just stopped and were gradually approaching. He silently grasped his weapon. Ever since the establishment of the Dawn Cavalry Legion, they had not fought head-on battles. It was not that they could not fight. It was that they did not want to fight. Their Royal Highness had never been willing to use such a costly method to win the war. But the Dawn Cavalry Legion had fought tough battles before. When they faced the attacks of countless dark creatures, the Dawn Cavalry had fought a bloody path and left behind a group of enemies who had been defeated by the infantry. But now, there was no other way. The City of Dawn had a total of 6 cavalry legions. They were defending the north of the 2 military fortresses to prevent the reinforcements from arriving. They had won. This meant that the mission of seizing the fortresses was safe. They had lost. It was very likely that the possibility of the Lord capturing 10 fortresses would be reduced to 4 or 3. If the elfin cavalrymen also lost, William would not be able to get a single fortress. So they had to win this battle. They could not lose. Now, he was leading 2 heavy cavalry legions with thunder warhorses and 1 light cavalry legion with thunder warhorses. Christian waved his hand, and the 3,000 light cavalrymen split into 2. They split from the left and right wings and formed an arc as they charged towards the orc heavy cavalry. Every member of the light cavalry was an elfin ranger. They were natural archers. Not only were they strong, but their shooting speed and accuracy were also outstanding. On the other hand, the 3 heavy cavalry legions didn't waver in the face of these arrows. No matter how many beastmen fell from their mounts, or how many mount wolves fell to the ground, they wouldn't split up their troops to chase after the light cavalry that ran faster. The Orc Legion only had one goal: to kill their way into the city, to kill the Dawn Cavalry in front of them. If they hid, then they would continue to charge forward. If they did not hide, then they would let this group of elves from the south experience the wolf cavalry of the far north. Roar! When the 2 armies were less than 3,000 meters apart, the howls of the wolves shook the earth. Christian took a deep breath. He clamped his horse's abdomen with both legs and led the charge. The next second, rows of cavalrymen followed closely behind. The 2 heavy cavalry legions of the Dawn Cavalry formed a wedge formation. They sped up, but the formation did not disperse. Until this moment. Throw! An order was given. All the cavalrymen, a total of 6,000 heavy cavalrymen, filled their enchanted short spears with battle energy and threw them far away with inertia. At that moment, the sky was filled with colorful short spears formed a spear formation. With a dazzling light, they instantly arrived above the heads of the Orc heavy cavalry. Activate your battle energy. The Orc Legion commander looked at the tens of thousands of short spears in the sky. They were all made of magical metal. He was infuriated by the rich. Comparisons were odious indeed. The orcs were crazier than the elves, but there was no other way. He could only rely on his cavalry to resist. However, the 6,000 short spears made of magical metal pierced into the orc army with an unstoppable momentum. In an instant, the orcs and wargs suffered terrible casualties. Almost 1,000 orcs and wargs died tragically under this rain of spears. Many of them were nailed to the ground by the short spears. More of them fell to the ground because they were seriously injured. They were then killed by the orc heavy cavalry. In a word, the power of the short spears, even if they formed a spear formation due to the resonance of battle energy, was far from being that powerful. After all, a group of high-level orcs could effectively block a lot of the spears in terms of HP, equipment, and battle energy shields. But there was a more important point. The purpose of the spears was not to kill them. It was to let them fall from their mounts. They would not be able to dodge in time and would be hit by their allies behind them. After all, a warg that weighed more than 1,000 kilograms was already wearing armor. Coupled with the weight of the orcs, the force of the charge was far beyond what an ordinary high-level orc could withstand. And then, a situation that made the orcs even more desperate appeared. Under this wave of spears, a griffin legion of 3,000 suddenly appeared in the sky. Another wave of spears rained down from the sky. This orc heavy cavalry of 9,000 men suffered unimaginable damage again. Then, it was the unstoppable rain of battle chi arrows that came one after another. When the cavalry of both sides collided with each other, the formation of the orc heavy cavalry was already showing signs of chaos. But the wargs still had the advantage in numbers. In close combat, the wargs were clearly superior. But the moment the two sides were about to collide, a total of 6,000 Thunder Warhorses. The horns on their heads released dazzling lightning at the same time. When the countless bolts of lightning converged together, a bolt of lightning that pierced thousands of meters straight through the Orc cavalry army. At that moment, the Orc army's formation was completely torn apart. Thousands of Orcs and their mounts were electrocuted. Those who weren't in the center of the lightning also had arcs of electricity jumping on their bodies. This even angered the Mount Wolves, and they forcefully threw their masters off. Kill! Only then did Christian give the order. Only then did the two waves of white and black collide with each other. Chapter 390. After the cavalry came the infantry, and after the infantry came the horseless ones. Ahem, the horseless ones were definitely not the cavalry. The scene returned to the fortress. William looked deeply at Bloodhammer. This muscular man did not like to talk, but it was undeniable that he was not very smart. It was a wrong tactic to fight head-on with him. Hence, William slowly put away the Sword of Hex. He decided to use his trump card. At that moment, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Dark clouds rolled. Bloodhammer's eyebrows, which were hidden under his mask, twitched. He was very happy, but his eyes flashed with disbelief. The berserker in front of him had taken out a bow and arrow. Sigh. Did a thunder berserker know how to use a bow? Put it down. Such a good bow should be used by someone who knew how to use it. Come on, brother, let's fight head-on at close range. That's a real man's way of fighting. But His Royal Highness, who was stroking the legendary lightning bow, ignored him. The entire lightning bow was made of crystal-clear thunderstones, and the bowstring was also made of thunder-type beast tendons. It was precisely because the bow was too gorgeous and dazzling that William didn't dare to show it to others. This bow, good, very good. As for how good it was good enough as long as it was better than an epic bow. William remembered his original occupation. He was a ranger. Therefore, he raised his middle finger again and hooked it in high spirits. Bloodhammer's expression did not change. He wanted to know what the guy in front of him wanted to do. But William hooked his middle finger again. He hooked his middle finger again. An electric current roared out again. This time, Bloodhammer was furious. William had gone too far and insulted the devil race. Did William think that he did not know what William's gesture meant? He had just taken a step forward, but William was faster. Before he could move, William suddenly retreated and drew the lightning bow. He shot a fatal arrow. 3 arrows were shot at the same time. A visible gravitational force appeared, but the arrows that were condensed with thunder battle energy were too fast. They fell a little, but they still hit Bloodhammer's chest. Pom, pom, pom. There were 3 consecutive explosions. It forced him to take 3 steps back. The muscular tyrant was unwilling to give up. He charged at William like a rhinoceros and continuously used his gravitational field, causing the ground within a radius of 100 meters to collapse. The city was distorted and the buildings collapsed. He also swung the heavy hammer that was connected to the chain at William. But William widened the distance between them. He had discovered a problem long ago. This silly girl's magic chain could only reach a maximum of 150 meters. It was enough for a melee fighter, but for a Grandmaster Ranger, this distance was simply negative. William retreated all the way to the edge of the city wall. When he had nowhere else to retreat, he leaped onto the northern city wall. He turned around and punched a few orcs who wanted to sneak up on him, sending them flying. Then, he turned around and drew his bow again. 9 consecutive arrows. So. An ear-piercing sound of something tearing through the air could be heard. 9 bolts of lightning shot out, shining brightly in the dark night. Bloodhammer's hand swung his iron chain hammer to block them. After blocking 3 of the arrows, the remaining 6 hit its huge body. For a moment, Bloodhammer was furious. Why was its body so strong? It was just like a living target. But he also felt that William's shooting was very accurate. Every shot was aimed at its vital parts. If William continued to shoot a few hundred times, Even if Bloodhammer was able to withstand the attacks, he would be shot down. Perhaps this weirdo would even attack its corpse. Hence, the Iron Fool hesitated for a while and gave up chasing. He turned to look at the city and shouted at the epic veteran who was in a stalemate. Then he dashed out of the northern city gate and escaped. William was dumbfounded. Gosh, where were the devils that loved to fight? Were they all so cowardly now? But William did not dare to let Bloodhammer leave just like that. He was afraid that this monster would rush into the cavalry of the City of Dawn. Then no one would be able to stop it. Then William rose from the ground. With the momentum of a thunderbolt, he chased after Bloodhammer, who was not very fast, and fiercely shot at him. So. Pom. The Grandmaster Devil Expert, who was about 3 meters tall, was shot down by William's arrows regardless of whether he was running on the ground or flying in the sky. 3 to 5 minutes passed. Dozens of arrows were stuck in his buttocks. When William saw this scene, he felt somewhat helpless. Every time, he aimed at Bloodhammer's head or skull. Unfortunately, Bloodhammer's gravitational field would always be effective, and the arrows would hit his buttocks. This was the main reason why Bloodhammer's buttocks were damaged. William chased after Bloodhammer and shot wildly all the way until he arrived at the battlefield, where 2 groups of heavy cavalry were fighting. The 2 of them crossed the battlefield, but William did not stop his killing intent. But the 2 of them crossed the battlefield arrogantly. The battlefield became somewhat quiet. Some elves and orcs who were fighting could not help but turn their heads to take a few more glances. The elves were less curious, so they did not watch much. So they seized the opportunity to kill. Thud! Hundreds of curious and even surprised orcs were beaten up by the elves again. When the orc heavy cavalry saw the legendary Bloodhammer being chased by the orcs, they knew that the city was not far from falling. The epic veteran was only there to hold the fort. Unless the Orc Empire was in a complete crisis, they would not take action. They had just suffered various attacks from the Thunder Heavy Cavalry. More than half of the 9,000 Wolf Riders had perished. In this situation where their morale was low, even if they charged into the military fortress, they would not be of much use. As for making use of the cavalry's advantage to charge into the Dawn army outside the city, it was really useless because there were too many chosen ones who had been resurrected. If only 4,000 Wolf Riders charged in, they would probably only cause a small commotion. If the chosen ones were to delay the Dawn army until the advanced professionals of the Dawn army arrived, they would definitely die. After hesitating, the Orc Empire's Wolf Riders chose to retreat. When Christian saw that they were trying to escape, he naturally had to beat them when they were down. He did not have to chase too far. 10 kilometers. Just 10 kilometers. Obviously, the Bloodhammer and William were even faster. The 2 Grandmasters streaked across the sky and rapidly flew towards the Black Great Wall. At the same time, rays of light continuously hit the Bloodhammer's buttocks, back, heels, thighs. Anyway, his back was basically full of arrows. It was a pity that his skin was extraordinarily thick. In addition, the 2 of them were flying in the same direction, so the strength of William's arrows was much weaker and could not cause serious damage. Until the 2 of them saw the Black Great Wall in front of them. The Bloodhammer hand suddenly stopped and turned his head around. Bang! There was a crisp sound. It hit him right between his eyebrows. This muscular demon race tyrant gritted his teeth and pulled out the arrow on his head. Panting like an ox, he spat out these words. Come on. Come and kill me if you can. At that moment, the world seemed to have quietened down. William swallowed his saliva. He looked at the muscular devil in disbelief. This be***starred voice was like a whining monster. Was this a Loli's voice? The voice was so perverted. Why did God give you such a huge body and such a girly voice? Do you think you're a Neza? In the next moment, the Bloodhammer did not speak, but he was even more furious. He saw William's astonished, incredulous, frightened, sad, and pitiful eyes. Of course, William wanted to explain, I'm not. Don't spout nonsense. My eyes are not that complicated. I just feel like laughing, but before the 2 of them could fight, on top of the Black Great Wall that was more than 50 meters tall, a few figures suddenly rushed over. The prince did not hesitate. He turned and ran. It was because he had changed his eyes of thunder. He saw a bald orc on the wall. He was surrounded by a group of arrogant warriors. He looked like a big boss. He should not be a big boss. Perhaps he was a prince of the Orc Empire. After all, even if he was not handsome, he should be burly. He could not be a one. For meter dwarf, not only was he shorter than a dwarf, but he did not have much hair. He had not looked like a cow-skinned orc. It had to be said, that fellow was the ugliest he had ever seen among all the beastmen. In particular, he was shamelessly combing the hairs on the top of his head. Tisk tsk. Even I can't do such a shameless thing. William muttered in his heart. Then he flew away. At this moment, the bald orc on the city wall was also looking at William, who was flying into the distance. Guerte kept his dragon bone comb in a small box and kept it in his space ring. He could not help but ask, "Who is that person?" "Your Majesty, that person is the Lord of the City of Dawn, the Prince of the Blackleaf Elves. His name is William Blackleaf. He is the vanguard of today's battle." Guerte nodded in realization. He's an elf from the south. Didn't he freeze to death when he came to the extreme north? How did he chase him all the way here? In the next second, he snapped his fingers. The crisp sound reverberated in the sky. A tornado formed by ice and snow engulfed a radius of tens of thousands of meters. The ground was torn apart, and trees were uprooted. The tornado whistled in front of William. Or rather, the ice and snow tornado was about to engulf William. William felt the extreme coldness. When he was about to be frozen, he was dumbfounded. What was this? How could he use a forbidden spell to scare him? Just as he crushed the random teleportation scroll, another crisp sound reverberated. The ice and snow tornado quickly disappeared. William did not dare to think too much. He swallowed his saliva and transformed into a bolt of lightning, disappearing into the horizon. Meanwhile, a voice traveled into the ears of the experts on the Great Wall. "Have some shame. If you kill him, I'll kill 100 grandmasters of the Orc Empire." Guerte sneered. "Come, let's fight in close combat. I, the icebound sword sage, am not afraid of anyone." Crack! A crack appeared on the Great Wall beneath his feet. The Great Wall, which had not been damaged for thousands of years, cracked at this moment. Guerte raised his hand to stop the furious subordinates beside him. They looked as if they were going to fight to the death, but in fact, they could not wait to return home. He grinned and said, "If the sages don't attack, then so be it. Why use weapons? I was just testing to see if you were around. Get lost. I've never seen such an ugly orc. D*MN, B*TCH. You're shameless." Guerte was enraged. But no matter how loud he shouted, there was no response. He took a few deep breaths and turned to look at his subordinates. "Don't let them gain a firm foothold. Continue sending troops tomorrow and fight them in the wilderness on the snowfield. If they want to reach the Great Wall, delay them for 2 years." "Yes, Your Majesty," the legendary experts replied in unison. Chapter 391. The battle lasted for more than 20 hours until the next morning. As the sun rose, the golden sunlight shone on the land. The flags of the City of Dawn were erected on the military fortresses. Blood and snow, knives and swords, cannon fire, rocks, and blood flowed like a river on the battlefield. Specks of blood filled the snowy plains, like a beautiful painting that had been partially destroyed by fire. The 10 military fortresses that the City of Dawn had attacked were all emitting black smoke. However, the flags of the City of Dawn had been erected in 5 of the fortresses. They were fluttering in the wind. When the players saw the flags of the City of Dawn, most of them sat on the ground. They were too lazy to move. It's too tiring. Mentally. That's right. This kind of continuous attack is too perverse. Even if I have strength, I can't find the accuracy of my attacks. Let's go. I'll go offline and sleep first. Many players who had not died more than 6 times also went offline. After all, this war did not give them any rest. It was too tiring. The players were too lazy to care about the missions that William was giving out. Experience was important, but their livers and lives were also important. However, there were 8 million players in the City of Dawn. There were 100,000 Liver Kings. These people were still accepting various missions. If they did not play until they were mentally weak or forced to go offline, they would not take the initiative to rest. William sat at the top of the city wall and looked at the corpses of the soldiers that had piled up. He took a deep breath and knocked his head against the wall. His eyes looked at the sky that was devoid of snow and dark clouds. At this moment, his personal guard, Knox, staggered over. He said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, the battle casualties have been calculated." The infantry corps had lost 2,145 high-grade professionals and 15,390 middle-grade professionals. The 6 cavalry legions have lost 4,302 men. The Dragonblood Legion has lost 89 men. There are 8,540 who are seriously injured and unable to fight anymore. 21926? William muttered to himself. This death rate did not exceed his calculations. But he could not help but sigh when a quarter of the 100,000 soldiers he had brought from the City of Dawn had died in a single night, especially the 8,540 who were seriously injured. In this magical era, what was considered a serious injury? Losing an arm or a leg was considered a serious injury. Moreover, this was the kind that lost their limbs and could never be found again. In fact, as long as they still had their own limbs, they could find some magisters and use a secret technique to connect their bodies together. However, the prince glanced at Knox. Let those heavily injured warriors return to the City of Dawn to recuperate. Tell them what I promised them. I promised to regrow their limbs. Yes. Knox nodded, but did not leave. He suddenly bit his lips and continued. Norton died in battle. When William heard this news, he was in a daze. Norton, his bodyguard. Guards guarding the door for him. These were the bodyguards that the prince would see every day when he got up and went out. There were also the bodyguards that usually followed behind him. He was a serious man, but he was loyal and devoted to his bodyguard. William stood up and patted Norton's shoulder. I remember. He's your brother? Yes, your highness. Knox nodded. This ring is for you. Bring all the corpses of the warriors of the City of Dawn home. This place is cold, and they are not used to living here. William struggled to stand up. He turned around and slowly left. Knox bowed and turned to leave. It was inevitable for a general to die in battle. As long as the war continued, very few people could survive to the end. Knox and Norton were brothers. This was very rare among the pure-blooded elves. He did not know how sad Knox would be, but the dead could not be resurrected. The past had to be in the past. Was William sad? He was all right. He rubbed his nose and placed his hands on the cold wall. He looked calmly at the Orc Empire in the north. Sparks appeared in his pupils. He narrowed his eyes and looked across space. He could see the black Great Wall that was 20 kilometers away. There were many archer towers. There were many cannons. There were many orc warriors, trolls, giant beasts, and even controlled behemoths and frost giants. I want to attack this Great Wall again. William sighed. He insisted on being the vanguard and taking down the 5 military fortresses first. Actually, there was another reason. He wanted to use the absolute number of battle achievements to prevent his soldiers from attacking the Black Great Wall that had caused the deaths of millions of elves. He had not participated in this mission before, but he still knew how to avoid greater risks. In the future, the legions of the Orc Empire would continue to be deployed, as long as the elves did not take down all the fortresses. In that case, bloody battles would break out again and again between the 18 fortresses and the northern snow prairie. As the Lord, he did not want his soldiers to die at the Black Great Wall. He could only obtain enough battle achievements in other battlefields to shut the mouths of certain people, to prevent certain people from targeting him and making him lead the other warriors to die at the Black Great Wall. His battlefields, they were the fortresses. They were the snowy plains within 20 kilometers. He wanted his Dragonblood Legion and cavalry to fight with the Orc Legion in the wild. He wanted to obtain the Legion buff that allowed him to win every battle, not the Black Great Wall that was like a natural moat. He was being opportunistic. But as long as he was human, he would be selfish. He was not a human. He was a half-elf. He should be more selfish. It was almost noon. The alliance of the 3 races sent 50,000 soldiers to each of the 5 fortresses to guard these 5 hard-won fortresses. They were not taking credit. They just had to stabilize the situation. Now, no one could take away His Royal Highness's credit. The commander of the 3 races, Charlie Reeve, who was a legendary warrior of the Snow Elves, came to the front lines to visit him. Charlie Reeve was very famous. William had not met him in his previous life, but he had heard of him. He was a legendary commander of the Snow Elves and a fire element professional. He had a domineering sword technique called Prairie Fire. He had a record of killing 2 legendary experts of the same level. It was important to know, as long as a legendary expert did not have a death wish, it was difficult for him to die. If a legendary expert wanted to kill an expert of the same level, he had to have unimaginable talent and power. If there were no accidents. When Charlie Reeve was young, he was a genius who had the potential of a sage. In a temporary tent at the military fortress, William pretended to lie on the bed. He had a constipated expression, as if he had suffered serious injuries. When he saw Charlie Reeve, he stood up and coughed out a mouthful of blood. "There's no need to get up. Prince William has made a great contribution. Since you have suffered such serious injuries, you should rest more. After seeing you, I understand that the future of the elves depends on you young people." Charlie Reeve used his eyes to signal the young men and women beside him to learn from William. William glanced at them, and his eyes lit up. He almost could not hold back the sparks that were about to jump out. These people were not simple. All of them had legendary bloodlines and were at the Grandmaster level. They were the top young experts of the 3 races, and some of them had the potential of a sage. What was more important was they were not only the young and strong of the 3 races, but they were also the future pillars of the elves. William used his insight. TSK. They were all future leaders. Not only were they the kind of people who held great power, but their personal strength was also quite strong. William was a prince who did not integrate with the elves. It was very difficult to meet an elven expert of the same level. There were rumors that even though the World Tree had been destroyed, the 3 elven tribes of the legendary continent still controlled the damaged space of the World Tree. That was the training ground for the elves to nurture their top geniuses. Otherwise, if the geniuses of the elves were like Prince Alan, who was killed by William, who only had legendary bloodline and had the same combat power as Trash, then there would really be no hope. William noticed that the expressions of these people were somewhat arrogant, but in the face of real battle achievements, most of them showed some respect. Naturally, His Royal Highness was not the kind of person who was arrogant. He coughed out blood and stood up. His face was pale as he smiled. "Commander Charlie Reeve, you're being too serious. We're all of the same age. Many of my brothers and sisters are more outstanding than me. I'm the one learning from them. It's not my turn to learn from you. When I saw all of you, I knew that with you, the elves would definitely defeat the Orc Empire." He used the group befriending skill. William's pitiful appearance and handsome face instantly garnered a lot of favorable impression points. Many people laughed and said, "You're too kind. We're all geniuses of the elven race. Prince William fought beautifully in this battle. We can't even catch up to you." That's right. Our individual strength is not bad. But we need to learn from Prince William in terms of commanding troops. Praising each other, regardless of the era or the background. As long as there were intelligent races, there would definitely be such people. The legendary Charlie Reeve looked at William with gratification. Very good. If all the elves were like this, their future would be limitless. It would not be a dream for them to return to the bustling center of the continent. But it was a pity. William was not a snow elf. He raised his eyebrows thoughtfully and said, "It's good to be humble, but no one can erase your ability to lead troops into battle and the achievements you've made in just one day. All right, I won't stay any longer. You youngsters can chat more." Charlie Reeve smiled and turned to leave. William and the others watched the legendary Charlie leave. The tens of people in the tent looked at each other. They did not know what to say. William used the group befriending skill again. He smiled and said, "Everyone has braved the snowstorm to come here. The celebration banquet has not started yet. Why don't we have a drink?" "Prince William, you're too kind. I didn't expect to be able to attend the celebration banquet. I've heard that there are many good things in the City of Dawn. I wonder what we can eat. One would not slap a smiling face. With William's current identity, status, and background, even if he had half-elven blood, no one would reject the befriending skill. After the group befriending skill banquet ended, William looked at the mission information that popped up. His heart was thumping wildly. He had made a killing. Chapter 392. Prompt. You have completed the S-level mission of Dawn Vanguard. Mission introduction. In this era of the rise and fall of the elves, you will be the vanguard army of the elves. Within 20 days, you will occupy 2 orc military fortresses or kill 200,000 orcs. Prompt. You have sacrificed the lives of 4 million chosen ones in one night. Within 24 hours, you have completely occupied 5 military fortresses of the Orc Empire and killed 650,000 enemies. Your name will spread throughout the legendary continent. Prompt. Your completion rate for this S-level mission is 300%. Prompt. You have obtained 5 million experience as a reward. Prompt. You have obtained 32 million achievement points as a reward. Prompt. You have obtained 2 legendary points, only available in the legendary continent. Prompt. Your achievement points can be exchanged for the desired rewards on the battle achievement table. Prompt. Blackleaf elves, moonlight elves, and snow elves' affinity with the camp increased by 3,300 points. Prompt. You have obtained the information of the unactivated legendary lord mission. Obviously, this seemingly ordinary S-level Vanguard mission had a lot of room for maneuvering and an unimaginable reward. Because this Vanguard mission was also an important side mission of the SS-level Super main storyline mission. And in a war, time was money and rewards. The Dawn Army was the Vanguard Army. Under the circumstances of sacrificing a small number of cavalry, they had first occupied 5 fortresses of the Orc Empire and killed 650,000 orcs in one day. It had to be said that this was definitely a very worthwhile mission. Of course, the Vanguard Army had achieved victory in the beginning. They had reduced the set mission target of 20 days to 1 day. They had even exceeded the target. This was also the key reason why this mission reward was so exaggerated. William did not care about the experience points that were only enough for him to level up by 1 level. His current target was his legendary points. This mission had increased his legendary points by a total of 2 points. Oh, the key was that he was facing an orc empire that did not pay much attention to him, and he was just the lord of the City of Dawn. This was akin to the militia in the countryside using farming tools to defeat the armored knights of the empire who were riding on war horses. It was simply inconceivable. But no matter what, these 2 legendary points would eventually make William more dazzling in the legendary continent. It was just that the name with 2 legendary points gave the prince a slight headache. Dawn Executioner, legendary point +2. Restriction. This legendary status is only effective on the legendary continent. Description. The Lord of the City of Dawn, William Blackleaf. As the vanguard of the elven race in the legendary continent, he sacrificed millions of chosen ones to occupy 5 of the 18 fortresses of the Orc Empire in one night. Description. According to the records of the Frost Empire scribe, after they were blinded, these chosen ones who could resurrect from the dead had died more than 5 million times. Description. The chosen ones are like a group of undead army with no visible corpses. They keep returning to the battlefield and charging towards the orc fortress in a frenzy. They keep losing their lives until they can no longer be resurrected. Description. The Lord of the City of Dawn is cold and ruthless. He has great control over the chosen ones. Many people tremble in fear. No matter what, from the point of view of others, William, the Lord of the City of Dawn, was famous on the continent. The main reason was that William had caused the deaths of the players 5 million times in a day. Very good. This kind of situation would happen more and more often in the future. But to the NPCs who saw this for the first time, it was a little too shocking. William had not only displayed his strong control of the Lord, but he had also shown that he was an outstanding general. Until now, William had obtained 3 legendary status points and 1 Southeast legend point. The function of the legendary status was obviously to increase his reputation. There were also bonuses in other aspects. For example, camp reputation, the influence of the City of Dawn, and personal influence. These were all hidden, but the effects were very obvious. It could be said that, when a legendary status was spread to the entire continent, he would become the idol of bards. His name would gradually spread to everyone's ears. Until this moment, when William faced many existences, he only needed to reveal his identity, and he could easily solve many problems that ordinary people could not solve. In other words, Prince William would soon be able to show his face on the legendary continent. But first, he had to have equivalent power or influence. William's power was slightly inferior, but his background and power were considered a feudal lord in the southern region. There should not be too many people who would challenge him. This was the so-called difference between fame and power. It was very likely that he would be attacked and retaliated against. Abbreviation: jealousy will make people fall into the abyss. Let's not talk about the legendary status. My 300% mission completion has activated a legendary lord mission. William saw the message. He was so surprised that he could not close his legs. Other things aside, any talent that had the word legendary in it would have an extremely abnormal special effect. And this endowment also had the word lord in it. It was as if it was tailor-made for him. Why not take a look at the attributes of this endowment? Endowment: legendary lord, legendary lord's halo, within a radius of 1 million meters. For every 10,000 Dawn professionals, your four-dimensional attributes will increase by 1%, up to a maximum of 20%. As a legendary lord, your four-dimensional attributes will be given to every Dawn professional according to their level, up to a maximum of 5%. Halo special effect: the morale of your subordinates will increase by 10%. Halo special effect: the health points of your subordinates will increase by 300 points per second. Halo special effect: your subordinates will have an additional affinity for you. Halo special effect: attractiveness to special talents plus 3%. Special effect: fury. When your health points are less than 10%, your subordinates will increase their attack and defense by 50%, and their intelligence and pain will be reduced by 30%. They will then enter a state of fury. Duration: 1 hour. Cooldown: 24 hours. Special effect: sacrifice. When your health points are less than 1,000 points, your subordinates will have all their attributes increased by 30%. Their attack, defense, and movement speed will all be increased by 100%. They will also attack the enemy in a frenzy. Duration: 5 hours. Cooldown: 1 month. Friendly reminder: this endowment is recognized by the Frost Empire, the Orc Empire, and the 3 Elven races. When they no longer recognize you, this mission will not be activated. Friendly reminder: if this endowment sacrifice is used more than 3 times a year, it will cause the endowment's level to decrease, because your subordinates will think that their lord is a useless person. What the F***CK? Ever since the prince saw the talent attribute, he was completely speechless. All his attributes were increased by 110%. If he could have this attribute, all his attributes would be stacked to 130%. Coupled with the power of the Saint's Spirit, he would be invincible on the battlefield. More importantly, 5% of his four-dimensional attributes would be distributed to other soldiers, although it was distributed according to their level. But he had to know, how high were his attributes? Just saying it out loud was enough to scare people to death. What was this? It was the legendary lord's halo buff. It covered a radius of 1 million meters. But more importantly, it had fury and sacrifice. TSK. Actually, the two had similar meanings. They were both when he was on the verge of death, or when he was about to die. The Dawn Army, no. Not only the Dawn Army, but the Dawn mercenary team would also be strengthened by the buff. Gosh, doesn't this mean that as long as I have this endowment, I can use it according to the number of players? More importantly, when the players get used to the 5% attribute bonus of my legendary lord Aura, who the F***CK can steal the players from my hands. The prince was going crazy. This was a super endowment that was tailor-made for him. In terms of individual strength, it was definitely not comparable to the Sage. But in terms of being a Lord, MMP, it was so powerful that it was insane. In the future, there would be more and more players. If William did not have a good plan, he would not be able to recruit all the players. It was like how William used the chosen ones to sacrifice themselves. If this method was used once, the NPCs would be aware of it. They would try to steal the players away. But this tactic was not very effective after it was used once. But it was fine to sacrifice themselves with equipment. The players could still cause damage. He was worried that the human empires would steal the City of Dawn. But with the legendary Lord endowment and the fact that he would bring the players along, the players would definitely be reluctant to leave the City of Dawn. They would also be reluctant to give up the 5% attribute increase. I can't take it anymore. You suddenly have such an awesome endowment. What do you want me to do? William gulped. He did not want to open the mission clue. Who knew if he would lead the Dawn Army to sacrifice themselves at the Black Great Wall? But I have no choice. This is obviously a mission with a time limit. Now that I've led the Dawn Army and achieved great results, many people have acknowledged the City of Dawn. If I give up now, I don't know when I'll be able to obtain the legendary Lord endowment again. William decided to do this for the future of the City of Dawn, for the future happiness of the players. He slowly opened the quest that had not been activated yet. Prompt: you have activated the Legendary Lord mission. Legendary Lord. As a lord recognized by the Frost Empire, the Three Elves, and the Orc Empire, your City of Dawn has developed rapidly and is very powerful. You have hundreds of thousands of elite soldiers and millions of chosen ones who are willing to sacrifice themselves. Many forces believe that you have the potential and strength to become a legendary lord. Mission introduction. Please create an invincible and invincible super legion. Prove to your enemies and allies that you can become a true legendary lord. Mission difficulty, S+. Mission reward, endowment, legendary lord. Mission time limit, 3 years. William's face darkened. What the hell? This was the condition of the mission. Wasn't this the dream that he had been working hard for ever since he had become a lord? Coincidentally? Is this a gift from the heavens? Did the goddess of luck know that I'm too handsome, so she lifted my skirt again? His Royal Highness suddenly fell into a state of worry about his gains and losses. Just as he was giggling foolishly, he suddenly raised his nimble eyebrows. That's not right. The Orc Empire has recognized me. Does that mean that the Orc Empire intends to target me? Gosh, even if it's a field battle, if the Dragonblood Legion is attacked by all kinds of groups, they will still suffer heavy losses. What do you mean by invincible? Using 1 legion to defeat 100 legions. That's invincible. If I'm targeted by the Orc Empire, it won't be so easy to get the Invincible Legion buff. William suddenly sighed. The difficulty of the mission didn't seem to be that easy. Chapter 393. 1. 32 million merit points. It's unimaginable. When William saw the merit points, he thought about how he had risked his life to obtain a mere 20,000 merit points in the fantasy continent. TSK. I can earn more with money. The prince sighed. He opened the merit points exchange list. It was divided into 7 categories: equipment, secret manuals, gems, medals, blueprints, treasures, and mounts. The equipment ranged from legendary quality to beginner white quality. Any type, any attribute. The 3 major elven races could produce anything that one could not think of. It was the same for gems, magical metals, and various blueprints. For example, the blueprints for airships could be found in the exchange list, but they were expensive and cost 800,000 merit points. Oh, His Royal Highness could afford it, but he already had it, and he still couldn't afford to build it. Looking at the situation of the players, even if some major guilds fought a bloody war for a few years, they would still be miles away from 800,000 merit points after accumulating all their merit points. Furthermore, the players who could participate in this mission did not have the exchange list of the elves. They had the exchange list of the City of Dawn. It was the simplified exchange list of the 3 major elven races. But even so, there were many benefits that dazzled the players. William scanned through the various exchange categories. Basically, it could be said that no matter which category it was, there were things that he liked. For example, there were legendary equipment, magical equipment, and rune equipment with special names. There were blueprints for certain top-quality gems, super rare magical metals, various equipment, and magical equipment. In short, there were too many good things. William could afford most of them. It was a pity that the prince, who had received the legendary Lord mission, had to think about how to make the Dragonblood Legion stronger. But what else can I do? All of them have epic dragon-scale equipment. The lowest bloodline is advanced, and there are a few legendary. There are a lot of epic and Grandmaster bloodlines. The secret manuals are either legendary or epic. When a number of Dragonblood Legion members exceeded 3,000, the Dragonblood Legion buff was automatically formed. The Legion also had the ability to combine. But if they were targeted by the Orc Empire, no matter how powerful they were, they would not be able to handle it. Even if they don't send their epic experts, it will be troublesome to deal with countless advanced and Grandmaster Orcs. The prince scratched his newly grown hair. Thump, thump, thump. A few more were broken. William threw away the few strands of hair and looked up at the sky with a heart-wrenching look. His newly grown hair had not been firm recently. Could it be that only by becoming bald could one become stronger? He couldn't possibly replace all of them with high-grade legendary sets, right? Who could afford to play this game? No matter how wealthy the City of Dawn was, the prince would have to sell his body after such a massive investment. William looked at the exchange list with a headache. He flipped through the pages. He looked through the categories one by one, trying to find a way to strengthen the army as a whole. Until, in despair, he could not help but wonder if he really had to forge more than 3,000 sets of legendary equipment. Suddenly, he was stunned by the classification of secret manuals that he did not pay much attention to. Life Chain. When William saw this skill, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Special skill, Life Chain. Exchange price, 1,000,000 merit points, holy **T. He even brought out such a godly skill? The prince gasped. The prerequisite of Life Chain was Life Bond. This was a skill created by the goddess of life in the mythological era and given to the elves. In the Second Era, after the World Tree of the Elves was destroyed, the race fell into decline. But the elves did not allow the humans to take the opportunity to destroy them. It was because the major elven races did not only have a single sage. It was also because the elves had a super legion with Life Chain. This was the trump card of the elves. The trump card of all trump cards. The kind that could defeat the Dragonblood Legion of the human empires. It was a super legion that would rarely appear unless the elves were on the brink of extinction. In the later stages of the game, William was fortunate enough to see the legion a few times. These legions had saved the elves from extinction more than once. Furthermore, the attributes of Life Chain were simply unbelievable. Life Bond, Life Chain, prerequisite. Same camp, prerequisite. Have an indestructible will, prerequisite. Have an extremely similar bloodline inheritance, prerequisites. Have a lord, king, emperor, master that you can swear loyalty to. Skill description. The learner of this skill has to make a vow to never betray the target. From then on, the learner of this skill will share life and longevity with the target. Skill restriction. The maximum number of people who can share Life Chain can reach 5,000. Skill restriction. When more than 10% of the people betray the vow, everyone who has shared Life Chain will return to the earth. Level. None. Cooldown. Consumption. None. William did not dare to believe it. But the truth was right in front of him. The three major elven races had placed this special skill on the exchange list. But he suddenly scratched his head. Yes, this is a civil war among the elves. Besides me, everyone else is a pure-blooded elven. Besides me, who else will exchange for this skill? Life Chain was a double-edged sword. If used well, they would look down on everyone. If used poorly, the whole army would be annihilated. The prince suddenly remembered something. He remembered that in a human empire on another continent, there was a skill called Life Link that he didn't know where it came from. That emperor had carefully selected thousands of professionals who were loyal to him and were also very strong, forming a life-chain legion. It was a pity. The good times did not last long. The emperor of the human empire seemed to have become a little arrogant. He had used this legion to anger the Seraphian, who wanted to dominate the gods' continent. As a result, the Sky City fell from the sky. The huge capital of the empire was destroyed. Countless commoners, nobles, and professionals were killed or injured. However, not a single person from the human empire's super army had fallen under such a heavy attack. However, this army that had just achieved several outstanding feats was now in a completely different league. It was because of the despair of some people and their distrust of the emperor. The entire legion was reduced to ashes. Their bodies, souls, equipment, and the legion were reduced to ashes just as they were about to reach the Sky City. Although this life chain seems to be tailored for the elves, it's the same for me. William's eyebrows twitched. He was indescribably happy. The loyalty of the elves was self-evident. They were more determined than the other races in the gods' continent. But the most important thing was, the elves had not sworn to the Elven King. It was the World Tree that gave birth to the elves. The World Tree had been destroyed. But no matter what, in the hearts of the pure-blooded elves, the World Tree would always be their faith and belief. Betrayal? It did not exist. But William had heard that this skill had a limit. A camp could only have one life-chain legion. The reason why the elves had split into more than 20 kingdoms was not only because of the destruction of the World Tree, but also because some first-generation elves were fighting for power. It was also because they wanted to create more life-chain legions to prevent the human empires from pressuring them. All right, this is it. William's eyes were burning with passion. He did not know if he could successfully exchange for the skill. After all, no one had expected him to obtain one. 32 million merit points in one battle. And he was eyeing this item. Chapter 394. William was pleasantly surprised and worried. He found the person in charge of the merit points exchange. It was a female snow elf who was at the Grandmaster rank. When she saw William, her eyes lit up, and she greeted him happily. Prince William, what do you want to exchange for? Besides you, no one else has merit points. You can exchange for anything you want. There's no limit to the number of merit points. Anything? The prince smiled and rubbed his hands together. When the female elf saw William smile, she instantly thought of many things. Her affinity with him increased, and she said shyly, "Yes, you have one. 32 million merit points. As a lord, I can recommend some good items to you. Wait a moment." William interrupted the woman who placed too much emphasis on appearance. Before she could say that she could exchange for himself, he said softly, "I'll exchange 1 million merit points for the life chain." When he said the last 4 words, the female elf was stunned. The elf girl's expression froze for a moment. Obviously, she didn't have the authority to teach him the skill life chain. As for the exchange of more than 200,000 merit points, there was a certain review and faction affinity requirement. In particular, the life chain was not something that could be exchanged for. It was created by the 3 major elven races to boost morale. For this purpose, there were many super treasures on the exchange list that were worth 1 million merit points. Some even exceeded 1 million merit points. It was purely for the sake of showing off. The elves wanted to use this war to let the low-level clansmen understand that the elves were still powerful and had a deep foundation. They had everything and were not inferior to the human empires. But they did not have the intention to exchange for the Life Chain Legion. Even if others exchanged for it, as long as they did not form their own faction, it would be useless. After all, the 3 major elven races each had a Life Chain Legion. Even if others exchanged for it, as long as they did not form their own faction, it would be useless. The life chain seemed like an oath. In fact, it was also a curse. In the later stages of the 10-Year Blood War, some legendary and epic elves might obtain a lot of merit points in the final battle. But it was not a big deal for them to exchange for treasures that could strengthen themselves. But to exchange for such items, it would definitely arouse the suspicion of the 3 elven kings. At this moment, The female elf could only transmit the news to her superior. When the epic-ranked big shot received the news, he had a headache and continued reporting. When the legendary big shot received the news, he was helpless against the super-rich William. Hence, after Bernice saw the transmission scroll, she had to find the two legendary elders of the Blackleaf Elves and the Moonlight Elves. After discussing for a while, the three of them finally agreed to give William the life chain secret technique. Your Majesty, won't there be an accident if we send out the life chain, just like that? The hand of the Snow Elf's third elder that was holding the life chain scroll trembled slightly. Don't worry. Although William is a half-elf, he has the royal bloodline of the Blackleaf Elves and the blood of the World Tree. As the first winner of this 10-year war, do I have to reject his first request? Bernice took a sip of her wine after she finished speaking. The third elder sighed. At least from the looks of it, William has some human instincts. Based on his performance in the face of the Darkness invasion and this war, he was indeed a child who abhorred evil. His loyalty to the World Tree was unquestionable. As a lord, he has a good way to nurture the loyalty of his soldiers. But Bernice interrupted him. She knew that the old fool liked to praise before killing him. She said, I know what you're worried about. William is young and has not even reached adulthood, but he's not stupid. Doesn't he know the consequences of teaching the secret technique to an outsider? Look at the warriors who are willing to die for him. I believe that he will choose an outstanding commander to learn this secret technique. You may leave. After you pass the life chain to him, you don't have to say too much. Bernice watched as the third elder left reluctantly, but also unwillingly objected. She smiled. Was William only loyal to the World Tree and the pure-blooded elves? Obviously, it was not that simple. From his eyes, I saw not only his fear in the face of a powerful opponent, I also saw the ambition hidden in the depths of his heart. From all aspects, the Dawn Army, the City of Dawn, and the countless chosen ones that he had recruited, he had risen up step by step. What was he trying to do? Of course, it was not his ambition to harm the elves. From William's recent interactions with the three elven geniuses, he seemed to be paving the way for his future. It's not a bad thing to be ambitious. I just hope that you don't go astray. Bernice narrowed her eyes. No matter how ambitious William was, he would at most become the Blackleaf Elven King. He did not have much to do with the Snow Elves. Why? Did he want to unify the elves in the legendary continent? Even if he had this ambition, he had to be alive. That was why she decided to teach the secret technique, Life Chain, to William. As for the elders of the Blackleaf and Moonlight races, they were just messengers. The great elder of the Moonlight race and the Blackleaf Elven King were the ones who truly agreed to the decision. If William chose the wrong person from the Life Chain Legion, and someone leaked the secret, that person would definitely die if he was not at the legendary level. By then, even a true god would not be able to save him. But if William displayed his ability to be as blind as a bat, the three major elven races would completely lose confidence in him. He would not even be able to become an elven prince, let alone an elven king. Hence, after waiting for a few seconds that felt like years, William finally received a piece of good news that was both delightful and worrisome. He had obtained the scroll of Life Chain. But he could also see the importance and preciousness of the scroll from the eyes of the third elder, who did not like to speak much. But leaking the secret, TSK, you've underestimated my talents. William laughed. After thinking for a long time, he transmitted a message to Albert to come over. Albert of the Moonlight Elves was one of the few elves who was 2 meters tall. Because he was a fire element professional, and because he wanted to become stronger, he became one of the few dragon's blood warriors among the elves. He was once the Legion commander of the Moonlight Legion. After the establishment of the Dragonblood Legion, Albert became the Legion commander of the Dragonblood Legion. But in the Dragonblood Legion, there were 3 legendary bloodlines and over 100 epic bloodlines. Albert's combat power was not outstanding, but there was an advantage to being an elf. Look at him, he's tall and sturdy, but that's just a genetic mutation. They were steady, loyal, and fearless of death. If one really thought that Albert was a brute, then one would be wrong about the elves. Not long after, along with the sound of the door opening, the muscular Albert walked up to William with an arrogant gait that did not care about his own family. "Your Highness, are you looking for me?" Albert was one of William's trusted subordinates, and his loyalty level had reached 900 plus. After he bowed, he suddenly discovered that William's expression was twisted like a chrysanthemum flower. He immediately became worried. What the heck? Was William going to settle the score? MMP, what a petty man. If he had known, he would not have become a Legion commander. It was a scam. After all, he had led this super legion to attack the fortress, and 89 Dragon's Blood warriors had perished there. Others did not know, but he knew that the Dragonblood Legion was William's treasure. Normally, he would be heartbroken if one of them died. This time, 89 Dragon's Blood warriors had perished. He had a premonition that even if he did not get skinned alive, he would still have to leave. "Ahem, Albert, how did I treat you?" William finally asked after thinking for a long time. In the end, the 2-meter-tall man immediately knelt on the ground and cried, "Your Highness, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. The Dragonblood Legion lost 89 people in battle, and it's all because of my duty. Please remove my position and let me be a guard at the gates in the future." The corners of William's mouth twitched. If Albert had not mentioned it, he would have forgotten that the Dragonblood Legion had fought well. After all, they had faced the Orc Empire's fortress. Losing 89 men in battle was considered a very small loss. The Dragonblood Legion was awesome, but William was not invincible. Basically, other than the Griffin Legion, who had the advantage in the air, no one had died. Which other high-leveled legion did not have thousands of casualties? But when William saw Albert's expression, he walked down from his chair with a gloomy expression. He slowly walked in front of Albert and said in a deep voice, "Raise your head." "Your Highness." Albert pursed his lips and looked at William. He thought to himself, "Let's talk things through. I can't cry, but that doesn't mean I don't want to cry." William extended his hand and pulled Albert up. He continued, "The importance of the Dragonblood Legion goes without saying. I won't say much about the 89 warriors who died in battle, but I made you the Legion commander because I trust you. Now, I'll give you another chance. Lead your Dragonblood Legion to take revenge for your 89 brothers. Kill 800,000 orcs. Do you have the confidence?" Albert was deep in thought. He wanted to reject this impossible mission, but he clenched his fists and nodded in agreement. Not for any other reason. It was because he was an elf, a member of the City of Dawn, and a warrior who was loyal to William. He did not know what it meant to reject a military order. Very good. William looked into Albert's eyes and smiled. He only needed to kill 300,000 orcs to achieve the Legion buff of invincibility. Albert, who was also a Grandmaster, felt his anus tighten when he saw William's gaze. Things did not seem good, but when a scroll appeared in his hand, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Under William's signal, Albert slowly opened it. In that second, this muscular man knelt on one knee and heavily patted his chest with his right hand. With a solemn expression, he loudly said, "I'm willing to pledge my life to Prince William Blackleaf. I'll become your most loyal believer. I'll become your sharpest sword. I'll become your vanguard. I'll never betray you. Are you my king?" William glanced at the affinity between them. He solemnly took out the Thunderblade and placed it on Albert's shoulder. "I accept your loyalty. I'll be with you." Next, Albert slowly stood up. His hands trembled as he held the Chains of Life scroll. It could be said that he was a pure-blooded elf. No one knew better than him what this scroll represented. This would represent, as the Dragonblood Legion commander, he would become the strongest legion and the sharpest sword in the City of Dawn. And the Dragonblood Legion that he would lead, it would represent invincibility. Chapter 395. William borrowed an uninhabited alternate dimension. 3,300 members of the Dragonblood Legion swore an oath, and Albert personally used the scroll. In the next second, all the members of the Dragonblood Legion sensed the connection of their blood. It was as if from then on, they were like a single person. They were like twin brothers, and they could communicate telepathically. Their tacit understanding greatly increased. But these were 3,000 twins, so the effect was even better. William looked at the Dragonblood Legion members who had 900+ loyalty points and 1,000+ loyalty points. He knew that he had succeeded. He used the remaining 320,000 achievement points to exchange for 3 legendary blood fruits. Then he returned to the battlefield and started his plan. One of the blood fruits was given to Albert, the commander of the Dragonblood Legion. The second one was given to Christian, the commander of the Blade Cavalry Legion. The third one was given to Julio, the commander of the Glory Legion. The 3 of them had followed William for a long time. When William obtained the blood fruits, they did not get the chance to distribute them. But when William saw that he only had 320,000 achievement points left, he was not interested in exchanging them for other resources. It was better to let the 3 of them improve. Although becoming a legendary boss with the help of the blood fruits did not mean that his strength was outstanding, and he could not even compare to some original legendary bosses. But when facing NPCs with epic bloodlines of the same level, he would be able to suppress them. The City of Dawn had a total of 90 legions, and most of the legion commanders had epic bloodlines. Those with legendary bloodlines did not have a fixed position in a legion. They would go wherever they were needed. For example, Burn Cinder, Diablo, Legolas, and the others. Until now, there were 18 legendary bosses in the City of Dawn. But William was the only one who had the aura of a sage and could be considered invincible among his peers. Burn Cinder, Diablo, and the little princess belonged to the second echelon. They were experts with legendary bloodlines. Little Angel Xian was a special expert. After becoming a battle angel, her light attribute had evolved and became Sacred Light. She had a great advantage against dark creatures, but she could not display her full strength against normal legendary bosses. As for the other legendary bloodline professions, they were relatively ordinary. Of course, no matter how ordinary a legendary boss was, they were existences that ordinary people could only look up to. His line of sight shifted to the military fortress. So far, other than the 5 fortresses that the City of Dawn had conquered, the Frost Empire was still using cannons and catapults to bombard the Orc fortresses without using magic cannons. After the War of Attrition lasted for 7 days, the Frost Empire launched its first tentative attack. The result was self-evident. They returned in defeat. The Frost Empire's losses were not heavy, but this was the reality of a real siege. Facing the Orc fortress, which had all kinds of advantages, and in a situation where the epic-ranked big shots could not appear, the Frost Empire's losses could not be considered heavy. Even a top-notch Grandmaster professional would find it difficult to take down a fortress when they encountered an enemy. In particular, they did not have one. 8 million chosen ones to continuously send themselves to death, reducing the intelligence of the Orc army. Therefore, the allied forces of the elves and humans were temporarily in a difficult situation. The 5 fortresses that the City of Dawn had conquered were not connected to each other. Each fortress was separated by an Orc fortress. However, to the Orc Empire, this also divided the elves' stronghold. But both sides wisely chose not to attack the Orc Empire. This was because to the north of the fortresses was the Black Great Wall, while to the south were the fortresses that the Snow Elves had built. After being tricked by William in the Orc Empire, they did not need to think about sending themselves to death anymore. If something went wrong, it would cause an unimaginable chain reaction at the front lines of many fortresses, and the final battle would be brought forward. Once again, William returned to the fortress that he had conquered. The city walls were filled with the flags of the City of Dawn. Most of the buildings inside had been renovated. All kinds of rubbish and corpses had been cleared away. The style of the buildings had also become a place that the elves liked to live in. Only the blood had been frozen, and it was difficult to wash it off. Otherwise, the human and elven soldiers would not be able to tolerate living in the smelly orc barracks every day. This huge fortress was comparable to a small city. All the buildings were related to the military, and there were no civilians living here. At this moment, the 73,000 regular soldiers of the City of Dawn who could still fight were all stationed here. The other 4 fortresses were guarded by the elven legions. Basically, there were more than 60,000 soldiers in each fortress. Now, Both sides did not intend to continue attacking the city. But since the war had already started, there was no time to be idle. Moreover, the fortresses of both sides were only used to prevent the invasion of the armies of other sides. But there were many orcs who liked to fight. They often appeared in the north of the fortresses to show off. If they were not sending small troops to cause trouble in the Frost Forest, they would enter the northern Grand Duchy through small paths to kill the civilians. So the current battlefield was too big. But now, the players were put to good use. William divided the 8 million players into small groups and dispersed them to the 5 fortresses, the Frost Forest, and the northern Grand Duchy. In other words, the players temporarily became the main force to deal with the small orc squads. At this moment, there were hundreds of thousands of players in the fortress of the City of Dawn. This group of people did not want to leave the army of the Dawn Army. They felt that if they followed the army, they would have more impressive missions. Go, go, go. A small orc troop has appeared in the northeast of the fortress. Does anyone want to form a team and kill them? I'm not going. These orc squads are deliberately showing themselves. There must be high-level orcs in charge. If we encounter them, we will die. Recently, we have been beaten to a pulp by the orcs in the north. Does anyone want to kill the dark creatures? Hey, the north gate is open. The Blade Cavalry Legion is going out again. Brothers, follow them. Once he said this, the idle and bored players suddenly became excited, and all of them rushed out. This group of players who did not want to leave the fortress, other than killing small groups of orcs, had only been carrying bricks and digging dung. They had to transform the orc fortress into a good living environment. But in order to not let themselves be too idle, the players would also form small teams to participate in various battles. It was not that these hundreds of thousands of players did not want to form a large team, but when the player army formed a large scale, the orcs would send their legions to fight. If it was a middle-level orc legion, it would be fine. The players who had the ability to revive could win. But if they encountered a high-level orc legion, they would be killed before they could call for reinforcements. Their equipment would fall to the ground, so from then on the ice field 20 kilometers away from the Black Great Wall, there were small teams of 300 players everywhere. This was because this small team of players would not attract the attention of the high-level orcs. This was because the high-level orcs' target was the regular army. Otherwise, the player army would follow behind the Dawn Army. In this extreme north, besides the orcs, there were also old enemies of the players. That was the dark creatures. It was obvious. In a previous life, when the Orc Empire only had one sage, they could resist the elves for 10 years. There was a key reason why the Orc Empire and the dark creatures were cannon fodder. But in this life, the situation had changed. Besides the elves, the Orc Empire also had the Frost Empire, which wanted a share of the loot. What was more important was the cannon fodder army of the Orc Empire had not started. The 8 million undead soldiers of the City of Dawn had been used first. They were also cannon fodder. The chosen ones were obviously more powerful than the dark creatures. The pressure on the Orc Empire doubled. Seeing this scene, Guerti could not tolerate it. He immediately made the devil's dens hidden in the extreme north appear one by one. Tens of millions of dark creatures had appeared in the extreme north. Whether it was the Frost Forest or the Grand Duchy of the Northern region, they could be found everywhere. The players and the dark creatures were having a great time fighting. One could revive after death. The other had endless numbers. Noobs pecked at each other. They were very happy. When the players killed the dark creatures, not only could they gain experience, but they could also collect some special materials to exchange for battle achievements. The players were very happy. William even issued a daily mission for this. It encouraged the players to kill as many as possible. Once the SSS level mission 10 Years of Blood War was issued, the players' forum was in an uproar. The Chinese forum was not a big deal. As long as the Chinese players were not members of the City of Dawn, they could quit the camp and join the Dawn mercenary team. Then they could rush to the extreme north and die. But the foreign players could not stand it. Why could they only do level missions and S-level main storyline missions, while the Chinese players had SSS level main storyline missions in the supercontinent? In short, their tone was very sour. Many foreign players were already discussing on the forum. When the world server was launched, they had to unite and ruthlessly suppress the Chinese players. When William saw these posts, he could not help but sigh. What's the point? We're of the same root. Why rush? But then again, as the players were divided into different camps, if the players stayed in one camp for a long time, they would definitely develop a sense of glory. In other words, after the NPCs discovered the various characteristics of the players, they would brainwash them to recruit them. William had now settled the players of the legendary continent. But if he wanted to abduct the sheep of the other continents, it would not be so easy. When the 9 continents fuse, what if the players start the war first? William raised his eyebrows. In his previous life, the wars between the continents were considered peaceful. Even if there was an alliance, it was not too exaggerated. But now, he had led the Chinese players to continuously obtain benefits. Each mission was more impressive than the previous one. The foreign players could not eat the grapes, so they could only complain that the grapes were sour. Now, there were envious voices, but they only said it verbally. But when the time came, what should he do to the sheep under him? It's fine if these foreign sheep don't let me fleece them, but they want to work together to bully my sheep. I can only let them see what a true legend is. William was browsing the forum. A Dragonblood Legion with the Zhanlong and Life Chain buff was ambushing the Devil's Dens. That was right. The York Empire had made these Devil's Dens appear in advance. This also meant that, as long as the Dragonblood Legion secretly dealt with 100 Devil's Dens, they would have a chance to obtain the Legion buff of invincibility. It had to be said, this had nothing to do with luck. It was just that William had mobilized the Chosen Ones, causing the main storyline mission to be changed in advance. This made it easier for the Dragonblood Legion. The battlefield in the extreme north had sunk into a war of attrition. Many powers in the continent had their eyes on this place. William planned to leave this place and explore a secret realm. Oh, this was the information he had obtained from the secret realm after killing the Black Dragon. Originally, he had wanted to take a look when he had the time, but for some unknown reason, the secret realm in the Nightmare Forest had appeared by itself. The time crack was getting bigger. In another 2 days, people would be able to pass through. Now, many people had gathered there. As the master of the Nightmare Forest, William had no reason to allow outsiders to enter his own secret plane. D*MN. Everything in the secret realm belongs to me. It's fortunate that the situation is too tense. Otherwise, I would have led the Dragonblood Legion to kill my way back. William's eyes widened as he looked at the water mirror magic that was transmitted to him by a mage. As something's wrong, William's eyes widened. He saw a few fellows in white robes with a full moon embroidered on the back of their clothes. Wait, the reincarnation of the god of fury, Delosis, is here too? Gosh, there are other reincarnations of the god. D*MN. Why are these fellows in crimson armor here? Didn't they fight with the reincarnations of the god? William really wanted to ask who had imprinted this water mirror magic. This person should be rewarded. At least 10,000 magic crystals. This was not an ordinary water mirror magic. Instead, it was a super photo of great value. But there are no professionals from the 4 major powers or the 3 empires here. William scratched his head. The situation was a little chaotic. What were these fellows trying to do? Even if it was an undiscovered primordial shrine, it wouldn't attract so many hidden forces. The fellows in white robes with the moon embroidered on the back of their clothes were not from the legendary continent. It could even be said that they were not from the gods' continent. William had once told the great elder of the Moonlight Elves. He knew that there were people living on the 3 moons. Those fellows were the people on the moons. As for Delosis and the other reincarnations of the god, they were not worth mentioning. The fellows in crimson armor were even more impressive. It was a super hidden organization that was spread all over the god's continent. It was called the Murdering God Temple. In other words, they existed for the sake of killing gods. But now, they were in front of the space crack, and they had not started fighting. This was not normal. If the top powers of the continent and the 3 human empires wanted to control the reincarnations of the gods, then the members of the Murdering God Temple were unscrupulous. The fellows from the God of Fury Temple were a group of unscrupulous people. They would kill the reincarnations of the god the moment they discovered them. No matter if the reincarnations of the god were good or bad, the god of Fury Temple would not hold back. There was also a shocking conspiracy. William knew a little about it. God of Fury Temple. God of Fury Temple. No, I can't wait any longer. I'm a master of the Nightmare Forest. You bastards dare to steal from me. How dare you? Chapter 396. The secret realm of the Nightmare Forest had appeared unexpectedly, and a group of powerful people had blocked the entrance. This was akin to a fire in his backyard. His neighbor, Lao Wang, wanted to take advantage of his absence to cause trouble. William decided to return home. As for the Dragonblood Legion, he did not need to worry about the Dark Devil Den for the time being. He could not do anything about it anyway. He would do his best and leave the rest to fate. William had tried his best to strengthen the Dragonblood Legion. How far the Legion could go depended on themselves. However, it was impossible to explore the mystic territory alone. Diablo and Burn Cinder were selected. Old Leather had to learn from Old Time. Annie's combat power and luck were high, but William was afraid that she would be in danger. He did not intend to tell her about this. It was better for her to blindly follow the map and tell the Dragonblood Legion where to go. After all, apart from himself, no one knew how powerful the people who blocked the spatial rift were. Let's put it this way. How could they be weak if they could mix with the reincarnation of the gods? Most of them had methods and abilities that were comparable to William's. Logically speaking, this meant that the secret realm was extremely dangerous. But the more dangerous it was, the more William wanted to go wild. Not long after, William brought Burn Cinder and Diablo to the city of Greenlight. After obtaining the precise location, everyone headed north and flew for dozens of kilometers. Finally, in a valley filled with fog, they saw a spatial rift that could allow people to pass through. At the same time, many gazes hidden in the fog looked at William and the others who came uninvited. A figure slowly walked out of the fog. He was wearing blood-red armor. In a cold tone, he said, "Get out. Adventurer, this is not a place for you. Leave." This was also a man in a white robe. He wore a hood over his head, but he had a pair of crescent moon-like eyes that shone brightly. But his tone was much more polite than the man in the blood-red armor. "Why don't you take a look at the corpses on the ground?" Another youth laughed coldly. He was wearing a golden armor that was full of scratches from swords. It looked very simple and unadorned, as though it belonged to the mythological era. However, the person standing beside this young man was none other than Delosis. When he saw William, he opened his mouth and rolled his eyes. He was too lazy to speak. God-slaying temple, blue moon people, reincarnated gods. These trainees look quite scary, but they are all grandmasters. Are they trying to scare me in my territory? William squinted his eyes and snapped his fingers. The next second, countless sounds of rapid movement appeared at the same time. It was the time it took to open and close one's eyes. An entire army of professionals appeared in the valley. Half of them were grandmasters, and the other half were advanced. They were all Blackleaf elves. These people were William's mother's personal guards. The middle-aged elf, who seemed to be wearing ordinary clothes, slowly walked out from behind William with a straw stick in his mouth. Douglet, William's mother's ace personal guard, an epic-ranked domain warrior. When he appeared, the three blood armors, the alien, and the two reincarnators of God, slaying Palace, all shut their mouths. This was because they could clearly feel the absolute oppressive aura, which could simply crush them into a pile of meat paste. In particular, all the pretentious, arrogant, and haughty feelings they had just had were instantly shattered. The words that they had just said were like feces that they had to swallow. "Thin Blue, what's wrong? This is my territory. Who asked me to leave just now?" William raised his nimble eyebrows and walked towards the space crack. He seemed to be saying that he was in charge of his territory. The blood armors, blue moon people, and reincarnated gods were silent. They were thinking about whether they should look for their parents. MMP, when they came out to train, someone brought troops to kill them. Was he looking down on them? At this moment, Delosis noticed William's gaze and coughed awkwardly. "Isn't this the Lord of Dawn? Long time no see. Delosis, old friend. You're here too?" William acted as if he had seen a familiar face. He walked over and hugged Delosis. The corners of Delosis's mouth twitched. He transmitted a message to William. "Brother, I've given you a way out. If you want to enter, just enter. Don't force it. Besides us, you won't be able to open this door. You're a good friend. Shall we team up?" William patted Delosis's back. "I'm not interested." "Very good. I'm just being polite." In the next moment, both of them separated expressionlessly. It was as if they had been acting. The others did not pay much attention to them. Delosis had no intention of introducing himself. It cannot be helped. The blood armors of the godly slaying temple were their opponents. The Blue Moon people were also at odds with them. If one had to trace the history of the grudges between the three parties, one would have to go back to the mythological era to find out. Of course, this was what William deduced from the memories of the three parties in his previous life. It was in his thoughts. There were all sorts of revelations in the middle and later stages of the game. No one knew how a large number of gods had fallen, but the godly slaying temple was definitely involved. As for the Blue Moon people, they were creatures from the moon. William did not know if they had migrated from the gods' continent. But there was one thing that could be proven. The Blue Moon people had appeared in the mythological era. It could be said that every time the eras changed, the Blue Moon people would appear. As for what they did, it had to be said the ambition of this group of people was as big as the appetite of the dragon race. But it was unknown if they were the descendants of the goddess of misfortune. Every time there was a lot of work to be done, it would end in failure. "Are you the lord of the city of dawn, the Blackleaf Elven Prince?" one of the three blood armors suddenly asked. William pricked up his ears. She was a young lady. But strangely, the people present did not have a good impression of him. There must be a problem with their aesthetics. They need to undergo a craniotomy to fix it. William thought to himself. Then he said, "Yes, do you know me? I've heard of your name. Logically speaking, you should be in the extreme north." The tone of the blood armor lady was as cold as frost. She was like an assassin who had walked out of hell. Every word she said had magical power. William narrowed his eyes. "My backyard is on fire. As the Lord, shouldn't I come back to take a look?" The blood armor lady did not speak anymore. Instead, a Blue Moon person slowly walked in front of William. He elegantly took off his hood, revealing a face that did not belong to the intelligent creatures of the gods' continent. Their faces were similar to humans, but their pupils were curved like crescent moons, and their skin emitted a light blue glow. It was a young man with a cold expression. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. After bowing slightly, he said in a continent dialect that had strayed from the norm, "Since you're the one who defeated the Viscount of Darkness, Prince William, you can naturally enter this world with us. But I have to tell you something. That realm warrior cannot enter. If a professional surpassing the Grandmaster level enters, it will cause a lot of trouble. It might even cause the alternate dimension to collapse. When that happens, all of us will die there. If it collapses, it's not the God realm. It's such a fancy name. It's better to call it an alternate dimension." William muttered in his heart, but he smiled and said, "Thank you for the reminder. I wonder if you can introduce this so-called God realm to me?" The three blood armors of the murderous temple could not be bothered with him. The alien shook his head coldly. He did not intend to say anything. The youth beside Delosis looked deeply at William. He looked at the sky arrogantly and said, "It's a legacy left behind by the mythological era. Only we can open it. You're lucky to be able to enter." William did not dare to say if it was his luck, but it was definitely your misfortune. His luck was so low, yet he could easily enter this alternate dimension. How could you say that your luck was high? Actually, you, William, had already recognized this guy. Badrit, the son of the sun god. In the light god's spirit branch, the strongest was the god of light. The Temple of Light once believed in the god of light, who was still alive. The second strongest was the sun god. He was also one of the main gods, but he had died a long time ago. Badrit was the son of the sun god. He had the blood of the main gods, but he had been sealed until now. He had the inheritance and bloodline of the sun god. He knew that he was the son of the main god. He was domineering and had an average temper. He was once chased by the experts of the murdering god temple, Don't ask why the murdering god temple did not send more powerful people to kill him. This was related to their other goal, which was to create a god. William did not wait for a reply. The space crack showed signs of collapsing. It did not expand. Instead, it continued to shrink. Looking at this scene, each of the three forces sent out a person. They cut their palms and offered their blood. They used their soul power to draw strange runes and inserted them into the space crack. As such, as the spatial crack absorbed the runes, it slowly expanded again. The expressions of the group of people who opened the door also more or less changed. The door could be opened, but what was behind it? They did not know. There were many alternate dimensions left behind by the mythological era. Many of the doors did not only lead to alternate dimensions. They would also lead to more terrifying places. They might even lead to the abyss world, which was the inner world. They could also lead to the dark world, the two transformed continents, and even the three moons. In short, everything was possible. After all, it had been a long time. The gods' continents had been torn apart. Many geographical locations had been completely transformed by the battles that had changed the heavens and earth. The opening of this door had a lot to do with the black dragon that William had killed. The murdering god temple was a mysterious organization that had been passed down since the mythological era. They could discover many doors that were about to be opened. After receiving the news, they had come here first, but they discovered a problem. They could not open the door by themselves. They had to find the successor of a god or the reincarnation of a god. Then, they had to work together with the Blue Moon people to cast the incantation to open the door. This was the main reason why they gathered together and did not attack. As the space crack continued to expand, it gradually became a door. The three forces chose to enter at the same time. William narrowed his eyes. When he was about to enter, Burned Cinder suddenly coughed. "Why don't we block the door and snatch the benefits when they come out?" William's mouth twitched. Why was Burned Cinder so smart? Many good things could not be snatched away. Moreover, who said that the door to enter was the same as the door to return? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go in first. William hid behind Burned Cinder and let him go first. However, the three of them entered the door. They did not feel like they had passed through a space door. It was as if they had stepped into a water curtain. But a horrifying world filled with blood fog appeared in front of them. William surveyed his surroundings. It was a familiar feeling, TSK. Wasn't this geographical location a valley with a spatial rift? The other three forces did not leave either. They seemed to be waiting for William. They did not want to kill him, but they wanted to gather their strength to survive. The prince's mouth twitched when he saw this scene. Sure enough, I told you that your luck stat isn't high enough. Damn, the inner world, the abyss world. Even the dark creatures did not dare to provoke the abyss world. They had taken the initiative to enter. Things had gotten out of hand. Obviously, no one had expected this question. According to the method of opening the door, the danger level would not be too high. Even in the abyss world, the danger level was low, and there would be some treasures left behind. Let me introduce myself. I'm Blood Armor 9, he's Blood Armor 6, and she's Blood Armor 3. One of the blood armors from the murderous temple said as he pointed at the other two. William raised his eyebrows in surprise. That woman was Blood Armor 3? It was not easy. In the organization of the murderous temple, it was abnormal for a Blood Armor 3 to be Blood Armor 3. However, Delosis and Bartlett were a little unhappy. They looked at the Blood Armor trio with resentment and anger in their eyes. They seemed to be saying that the murderous temple was looking down on them. They had joined forces with the reincarnation of the god and the son of the Lord God, but they did not even send out Blood Armor 1 and 2. That was too much. There were also 3 people from the Blue Moon tribe. The cold-looking young man looked around cautiously. After saying something in bird language, the light on their skin quickly disappeared. It was obvious that they did not want to attract any attention. The youth slowly said, "You can call me Lanes. I'm the son of the Blue Moon." Once he said that, everyone turned to look at him. The son of the Blue Moon? There were 3 moons in the god's continent. They were the Blue Moon, the Green Moon, and the Purple Moon. This person was called the son of the Blue Moon. This meant that Lanes' identity was different. Regardless, after they came through the door disappeared from their sight. Their main goal was to take whatever they could get. If not, they had to look for another door. There were more than one door left behind during the era of the gods. After all, the creatures from the abyss world, even if one was the son of the blue moon, one had to be careful in this place. Because this was a world filled with resentment, evil, curses, sins, and countless horrors. All the negative factors in the gods' continent were present in this world. Hence, William decisively picked up the dream darkness rough stone and instantly transformed into a not-so-tall devil. No matter what, the abyss world was connected to the dark world. It would be easier for a devil to survive here than a half-elf. Burned Cinder and Diablo widened their eyes. The others were expressionless. They looked at William with pitiful eyes, as if asking, "Brother, do you have any more?"